One of the most unexplored and mysterious places on Earth is located in plain sight. It's one of the most majestic monuments of humankind. The wonder of the ancient world hides a secret that scientists and archaeologists still can't solve. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza in Egypt. The huge sculpture of a lion with a human head was carved out of rock about 4,500 years ago. Scientists still don't know the exact date of its creation and are also unaware of who built it and what for. There are many assumptions and theories, but none of them has been confirmed. Most people have seen this majestic sculpture either in photographs or in reality, but almost no one knows what's hidden underneath it. The statue of the Sphinx was carved from a single piece of limestone. It was painted. The remains of color pigment on the surface prove this. In the distant past, the Sphinx looked much brighter and more colorful than what we see now. But even after thousands of years, its greatness hasn't diminished. And by the way, Sphinx is not the real name. It was invented by the Greeks about 100 years or more after its creation. Initially, the Egyptians called the statue Hor-em-Akhet. There are many legends and theories saying the Sphinx is there for a reason. It's like a watchdog that guards the tomb of the pharaoh and the secrets of ancient Egypt. These legends become more plausible when archaeologists discovered hidden entrances at the feet of the Sphinx. They believe that these secret passages are the beginning of the tunnels leading to the halls with treasures. You can find a lot of stories on the internet that claim the Sphinx hides the Hall of Records, a repository filled with ancient and secret knowledge. One of the main artifacts of this repository is supposed to be the records of the ancient mythical state of Atlantis. According to legends, the entire library from this city was moved under the Sphinx. The entrance to this library must be located next to the Sphinx's right paw. Many archaeologists tried to find this entrance, but came away empty-handed. Also, there are many images with detailed diagrams of the underground city that consists of a network of tunnels and chambers under the Sphinx. Someone says there are structures as tall as 12-story buildings hiding underground, but there's no evidence of this. Archaeologists, even after millennia, continue to explore the mysterious sculpture. At the same time, many Egyptians don't want to learn more about the Sphinx. They're terrified of awakening something supernatural. In 1998, scientists discovered tunnels leading to empty caves under the Sphinx. They found evidence of earlier excavations there. It's quite possible that someone managed to find the treasures and take them away. Some people believe Egyptians found some kind of artifact under the Sphinx that has the power of unknown advanced technologies. The artifact is so powerful that it can change the course of history. Of course, most theories are just fairy tales of conspiracy fans, but it's a confirmed fact that the Sphinx hides a system of caves and rooms. There are so many rumors surrounding the Sphinx that it's impossible to understand what's true and what's false. In any case, it's difficult and dangerous to study the sculpture because active excavations can destroy it. And then the entrance to the underground rooms can get blocked by rocks and lost forever. Also, further exploration requires a lot of money, and financing is not always easy to find. But the main reason? It's too risky. There's no guarantee that people will be able to get out of the underground labyrinths. For these reasons, scientists and archaeologists have been exploring this majestic structure for so long. Another famous architectural monument with a secret is Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Everyone admires the images of the U.S. presidents' faces carved into the rock, but few people know that there's a secret room hidden behind the head of Abraham Lincoln. The architect of Mount Rushmore wanted to carve slabs on the rock with the record of the main stages of the country's history. But his plan was too complicated to carry out. Then he was offered to implement it on a much smaller scale, to build a secret room inside the mountain. The idea was to save this knowledge so that future generations will always remember the history of their country. Unfortunately, the architect didn't have time to finish his work. The construction stopped for several decades. But in the late 90s, the project was resumed. Porcelain enamel panels depicting the history of the US were placed in the room. It's possible that these plates will be stored there forever. But people can't see them, at least for now. The room is inaccessible to tourists as it's too difficult to get inside. Another secret room is located in the Empire State Building. More precisely, it's not even a room, but a place where you can take cool photos. Almost all tourists gather on the observation deck of the 86th floor to enjoy a stunning view of Manhattan. But there's another deck with panoramic windows on the 102nd floor. There are way fewer people there because almost no one knows about that place. Fortunately, access to this deck is open to everyone. You probably won't have to wait in line for a long time to take a photo. You'll feel special because you're in such a secret place where there are almost no people. But the coolest place is even higher, on the 103rd floor. This is a spacious observation deck where celebrities get their photographs taken. It's not a public place, but if you know the right people, you can get there. There are almost no security measures on the site. Only a low ledge between you and an abyss. That's why crowds of people are forbidden from coming here. It's not so easy to get there, and you're unlikely to succeed without a guide. First, you need to choose the right elevator that will take you there. Then you'll go through several engineering rooms filled with pipes, electrical panels, and other technical stuff. The final part of your way is a set of stairs inside a tiny corridor. And here you are, at the top of New York. Now we're in Paris. See the Eiffel Tower? Inside it, there are restaurants and observation decks. But if you try hard, you can find a secret apartment. Now it's a museum, but it was built so that people could live in it. The architect of the tower, Gustav Eiffel, created this apartment in 1889 for himself. It's almost at the very top of the Eiffel Tower. Imagine what a beautiful view he observed every day. He was the first and only tenant. No one else could gain access to this place. When the architect passed away, the apartment remained empty for a long time. Only recently, they restored it and turned it into a museum. Inside, the epoch of the last century is recreated. They even put wax figures of Gustav Eiffel, his daughter, and the American inventor Thomas Edison inside the room. This place is filled with an endless stream of passengers, office workers running late, visitors from other cities, noise, and train whistles. At Grand Central Station in New York, among all these sounds, you can hear the sound of a ball hitting a racket, if you're in the right place. A real tennis court is hidden inside New York Central Station. It belongs to a tennis club that arranges corporate games for employees of many companies. The club was opened in the 60s. Now we're moving to London, Charing Cross Road. It isn't easy to find one secret place here. To do this, you need to look carefully at your feet. Do you see these sewer grates in the asphalt? Inside them, you can notice two signs with the name Little Compton Street. Yeah, there's another street right below you. It disappeared from all maps at the end of the 19th century. Charing Cross Road was built over it. The identification signs that you see are part of old engineering tunnels. There's another interesting place in London. It's located in the southeast corner of Trafalgar Square. At first glance, it looks like a thick lamppost, but there are too many tourists walking around. You come closer and realize that one person can easily fit inside the post. The lamppost belongs not to an electrician, but to a police officer. Yeah, this is the smallest police station in the world. It was built in the 1930s and used as a watch post. Officers had to sit there one by one and watch Trafalgar Square. That always attracted a lot of pickpockets and all kinds of other criminals.
Scientists have discovered a never-before-seen pyramid immersed in the sands of Judea. After a little digging, they discovered that it held treasures that had been untouched for over 2 millennia and historical secrets that we can only now access. At the Zohar Fortress site, 2,600 feet above the Dead Sea, archaeologists were searching for manuscripts that would provide new information about the history of the site. The excavation was originally part of a long-standing campaign launched by the authorities. Its goal was to protect the sites from looting and unauthorized excavations. What they didn't expect was to find a pyramid-shaped structure built on top of a hill, made of hand-cut stones, each weighing hundreds of pounds. At first, the experts thought it was just a tomb, but they soon noticed the shape of the original walls and understood that the mound was a construction. They immediately realized that someone had dug into the top of the structure, probably looters who had spotted something valuable there. Luckily, most of the structure was still buried in sand, so the most valuable finds were hidden from sight. In the first week of excavation, volunteers found fragments of papyrus, bronze vases, and even ancient furniture, which were exceptionally well preserved. The desert climate had been a great ally in preserving those artifacts over the millennia. With little humidity in the air, mold cannot form. So, organic materials such as wood and fibers are protected from cracking and deformation. Hypotheses suggested that the pyramid had been built during the First Temple period. However, new discoveries have shown that it's more recent, from the Hellenistic period. Considering this and the fact that the structure dates back 2,200 years, it's believed that it probably appeared shortly after the death of Alexander the Great, the famous ancient Greek king of Macedonia. At that time, his generals divided the former Seleucid Empire. Ptolemy took control of Egypt and the surrounding regions, including the Dead Sea area, while Seleucus took control of the north, which is now part of the Middle East. It's still not known for sure whether the pyramid was built under the rule of the Ptolemaics or the Seleucids. Both Ptolemaic coins and coins from the Seleucid kingdom have been found at the site. Even so, many scholars believe it was built when the region was under Ptolemaic control. Evidence also suggests that the building, despite its longevity, collapsed at some point. But that's not why it was abandoned by the ancient Egyptians, which begs the question of what purpose it was built for. Some believe it was used as a tomb due to its picturesque location on top of a hill. Others believed it may have served as a historical monument. However, one of the strongest theories is that the pyramid was a guard tower, protecting an important trade route along which salt and bitumen resources from the Dead Sea were transported to coastal ports. They also believe it may have been used by Ptolemaic officials to collect taxes from travelers. It would be something equivalent to our modern-day toll booths, or even port inspection agencies. Although the contents of the papyrus documents remain a mystery, it seems very likely they were written using the Greek alphabet, and some experts believe that they may have been tax documents, which would make perfect sense, given the theory that the pyramid was a guard tower. The team calls it a fascinating historical mystery that the dig is helping to unravel, but the find is just a grain of sand in an entire desert. The dig is part of a larger project that's been going on for a long time. And in the last 8 years alone, it has scanned 111 miles of desert cliffs and identified approximately 900 caves within that radius. Using rappelling equipment, advanced technology, and specialized documentation methods, archaeologists discovered thousands of rare items, such as hidden scrolls, woodworking tools, carpets, leather goods, and even treasures. For them, the Judean desert is an ancient vault just waiting to be opened to reveal its secrets. A few years before they found the mysterious pyramid, they discovered a cave that had served as a refuge for Jewish rebels almost 1,900 years ago. The site was about 262 feet from the top of a cliff, and because of its difficult access, it hadn't been explored yet. Inside, they found previously unpublished fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls that contained religious passages written in Greek. 11 lines of text were reconstructed thanks to the good condition of the papyri. So, scientists were able to identify their etymological content. Probably the best thing, there was no problem with preservation. Thanks to the dry and hot conditions of the desert, the artifacts were in impeccable condition. And there were other historical treasures there. The teams found rare coins, a partially mummified skeleton over 6,000 years old, with skin, tendons, and even strands of hair. There was also a giant basket made of plant fibers, considered the oldest in the world, more than 10,000 years old. With a capacity of up to 26 gallons, it was made about 1,000 years before the invention of ceramics. Speaking of historical treasures, there's another one that has caught the attention of the scientific community. A small piece of fabric that is around 3,800 years old. But it's more than just simple fabric. Dyed with the rare scarlet paint mentioned many times in ancient religious texts, this find is the oldest known evidence of fabric painted with a dye made from insects, known as scarlet worms. This is where the intense red hue comes from. It was a highly valued color, like royal blue and purple, because those insects lived in oak trees and could only be harvested for a short period during the year. So, those dyes were reserved for sacred fabrics, such as priests' clothes, marking status and religious importance. And although this discovery had great significance for archaeology, its size was actually tiny, measuring less than 1 inch. The fragment was discovered in 2016 during excavations in the so-called Cave of Skulls, but it's not known exactly how this fabric got there. According to experts, it's evidence that people knew how to dye wool fibers already 3,800 years ago or so. It also provides us with proof that the ancient textile industry already used animals at about the same time people began to create written sources. Fabrics painted using this type of dye were recorded in more recent periods. But what makes this piece really special is the fact that it is much older than any other. Another important discovery was made in 1980, when scientists found a seed that was over 1,000 years old, which turned into a mysterious tree named Sheba. They spent 14 years cultivating this plant, which is now about 10 feet tall, only to discover later that it could belong to an extinct lineage of trees that had grown in the region. The seed dates back to a period between 993 and 1202 CE, and they believe that Sheba may be a biblical tree commonly associated with healing. Although it's not been possible to identify the exact species, since the tree hasn't flowered, we know that it belongs to the genus Commiphora, which is related to famous African plants, such as the myrrh tree. But time has revealed something even more special. Its leaves and resins are rich in compounds that have medicinal, antioxidant, and even skin-soothing properties. This means that the tree may represent a forgotten lineage whose resin had medicinal value and was mentioned in ancient texts. This brings to light how ancient people dealt with botanical medicine. Egyptologists have been digging around every inch of the Great Pyramid for ages. Yet somehow, they overlooked this stunning pink granite bathtub buried a few miles next to it. And here's the deal. This mysterious oval tube lying next to the Khufu pyramid for years may provide evidence that the Egyptians built the pyramids not only for monumental purposes, but also to generate electricity, experimenting with it long before Alessandro Volta and Thomas Edison. The Giza Plateau is famous for its 3 pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. But there are also 2 smaller foundations next to them, the unfinished North Pyramid of Zayet el-Aryan and the Layer Pyramid. Some researchers say these buildings were never finished, while others think they were destroyed for more mysterious reasons. One of these reasons might have to do with the original usage of the Giza pyramids, the idea that they were used as an electricity generator. To connect these dots, we need to go back to the beginning of the 20th century. That's when an Italian architect and Egyptologist named Alessandro Barsanti decided to examine the Zayet el-Aryan pyramid. Near the site, he noticed something unusual: scattered granite fragments. To a casual passerby, these might have seemed insignificant, but Barsanti recognized the signs. You see, ancient Egyptians often used sites to prepare stones before transporting them to their final destinations. The fact that there was granite on the ground intrigued him. Granite was a more expensive material than the limestone typically used for pyramids, which suggested that it might have been intended for an important and possibly hidden structure. At a depth of 68 feet, they encountered a huge pink granite block. He kept going with the excavations, and they revealed ancient inscriptions carved into the stones. They sent the drawing to experts, but no one could decipher what they meant. Were they instruction sets to something? That's when Barsanti made his biggest discovery. He found an oval-shaped vat carved from pink granite and polished to a mirror-like finish. The thing is, the vat had been carefully sealed. When they opened it, they found a thin black residue along the walls. I'm thinking something in the lines of a black oily substance. This discovery raised many questions for him. It didn't make sense to him that ancient Egyptians would go above and beyond to seal and protect this strange vat. By 1911, Barsanti had to abandon his effort to figure out what was the deal with that mysterious pit. But his findings intrigued researchers all over the world, and they've got their own opinions about it. One of these modern theories suggests that the other pyramids could have been used as a part of a bigger whole. It suggests that the Khufu pyramid was actually used as a water pump designed to irrigate the desert area. Apparently, the pyramid's internal chambers would function as a hydraulic system. In the 1990s, an engineer took this theory seriously and studied the pyramid's subterranean chamber. Surprisingly, he found actual signs of water damage. Apparently, the pyramid generated powerful compression waves, aka pulses, that could create electricity. This raised an important question. Could the ancient Egyptians have used the pyramids as a generator in order to produce electricity? On paper, that was proven to be possible, but hey, agreeing on the original use of the pyramids is probably one of the most difficult things in the world. So, we're still not 100% sure about this. Apart from that, Egypt is a playground for important discoveries regarding humanity's past. I mean, scientists have just discovered what looks like a cosmic command center, similar to that room from the Doctor Strange movies. They discovered an L-shaped astronomical observatory, measuring around 9,000 square feet, dating back to the 6th century BCE. Definitely the first and largest of its kind from that era. The mud brick structure housed tools used for calculating dates related to ancient Egyptian rites, royal coronations, and agricultural plans. This observatory is located in the archaeological site known as the Temple of Phuto, just 50 miles east of Alexandria. It's pretty impressive. The structure was designed so that you'd get inside the room through an east-facing entrance. This way, you'd get to see the sunrise. Once inside, you'd find a pretty huge shadow clock, used to tell time by tracking the movement of shadows inside the room. This variant of a sundial clock was nearly 16 feet long. That was quite an exciting discovery. Another interesting one was that scientists and Egyptologists have discovered the first ever pregnant mummy. Now, even if we know quite a lot about mummification processes, we keep making discoveries that open new doors into the lives of ancient Egyptians. It took so long for someone to find out this mummy was expecting at the time she was embalmed because she was placed in a male's coffin. More specifically, a male priest. Historians say that during the 19th century, a lot of traders mixed coffins up in order to sell them. Yes, that means they opened them and switched mummies to please their buyers. It was a complete surprise because they were hoping to study more about ancient health issues when they opened this coffin up. But they had another special research on their hands: prenatal practices in ancient Egypt. This mummified woman, who lived about 2,000 years ago, was from 20 to 30 years old when she passed away. She was found in Thebes, and her remains were incredibly well preserved. You see, mummification recipes varied across Egypt. In this woman's case, researchers could tell she was a member of the high society since she was buried with special amulets. But since mummification methodologies differed so much between cities and time periods, they still have to dig further to understand why she was embalmed along with her baby. Speaking of mummies, scientists were digging up a final resting place in Saqqara, also in Egypt, and they unearthed two embalming workshops. One was for humans and the other for sacred animals. Apparently, the workshops date back to about 2,400 years ago. They were equipped with stone beds, clay pots, and ritual vessels. Everything you needed to mummify. But that's not all. Archaeologists also stumbled upon cheese stored in jars behind tombs that were over 3,000 years old. Yep, cheese. This shows that the ancient Egyptians were pretty savvy when it came to preserving food, too. They knew how to store stuff for the long haul, not just the mummies. It really shows how they applied their preservation skills to both food and bodies, giving us a glimpse into their impressive technological know-how. Scientists have also found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies, and to their surprise, it was completely covered in gold. You see, Egyptian mummies covered in gold are already a rare thing, but they weren't expecting it to be the oldest one ever found. The mummy was quite well preserved, and they could identify that it was the remains of a wealthy man called Hekashepes. Many symbols show that he was important and wealthy, like the band he wore on his head and the bracelet on his chest. He was also dressed in a tunic wrapped with a belt, which was a way to preserve the good appearance of a person after they passed away. To reveal it, they had to open the final resting place with mortar. Basically, it was like they were opening a time machine, just as the ancient Egyptians did 4,300 years ago. If you think about it, it's almost like entering a time capsule. Enough about mummies. Scientists also found something very exciting hovering above the pyramids. They had to use a fancy top-notch radar known as LARID, aka Low Altitude Long Range Ionospheric Radar, which can see these invisible waves far away into the sky. LARID helped them discover giant plasma bubbles floating in the air above the pyramids. These bubbles are called plasma bubbles, and they wreak havoc on modern technologies. I mean, they can disrupt GPS and phone signals for hundreds of kilometers in diameter from where they're located. These bubbles are massive, sometimes as big as cities, and they're caused by the sudden depletion of charged particles in the ionosphere. So, instead of spreading out evenly throughout the ionosphere, they stick together in this wave-like form. This was a pretty important discovery because it can help scientists understand how to prevent these waves from messing with our technology.
Wow! Scientists have found a lost city beneath Egypt's pyramids. And it's incredibly large, bigger than the biggest target you can imagine. Underground chambers, passageways, and vertical structures. Scientists have no idea what purposes they serve. But let's start from the very beginning. Italian and Scottish scientists studying the Pyramid of Khafra discovered something that looked like secret tunnels under 3 pyramids. This find might change what we know about ancient Egypt. The expedition, called the Khafra Project, was led by Corrado Malunga from Pisa, Italy, and Filippo Biondi from the University of Strathclyde, Scotland. Their mission was to focus on exploring Khafra's pyramid, the second largest on the Giza Plateau. Scientists uncovered a massive structure beneath the Pyramid of Khafra. Could it be an ancient Egyptian underground city? The experts analyzed the data they had and came to the conclusion that 8 large vertical structures could be hiding beneath, possibly wells or shafts. They extend a staggering 6,500 feet across. Imagine placing 2.5 Burj Khalifas on the ground, one after another, and you get the sheer size of this find. These shafts also plunge nearly 2,000 feet underground. Some of the deepest underground stations in the world are located at a mere 380 feet underground or so. These cylindrical shafts are surrounded by spiral paths. Picture some old Gothic castle. They're connected to 2 giant, weirdly shaped chambers. Are those cubes? Or possibly bowls? Each of these chambers is likely more than 260 feet across. Now, even though we know about the structures now, no one has figured out their original purpose yet. Want to hear something even more shocking? Okay then. The team is almost sure that similar access points can be found under all 3 pyramids. In other words, all of them might be linked by a hidden system of underground tunnels, chambers, and passages. Even deeper, about 4,000 feet under the surface, there might be more unknown structures. And doesn't it add to the mystery? But the coolest news is that, according to some team members, these hidden structures near Giza pyramids could align with the legendary Halls of Amenti. In ancient Egyptian mythology, it's a place where people are believed to arrive when they're close to the end of their days. There, they are said to take a 3-day-long trial, facing their biggest fears. Now, how did scientists even discover these hidden spaces? To uncover them, researchers used 2 satellites positioned 420 miles above Earth. They sent radar signals to the Giza Plateau, and these signals generated detailed images, which were later compiled into a 3D model of the underground layout, including the newly detected shafts. Then, using synthetic aperture radar or SAR technology, which is a type of radar that can penetrate through stone, the team also spotted 5 small room-like structures hidden deep within the pyramid. One of these chambers contained a sarcophagus, which was once thought to be the tomb of Pharaoh Khafre. But now, scientists believe this was a mistake. The true burial site is likely to be elsewhere. In any case, these 5 hidden rooms were completely unknown before the scans. They seem to be arranged in the center of the pyramid and are linked to underground pathways leading somewhere below the structure. There's an opinion that these tunnels could lead to more hidden chambers and wells. Some of them might be around 4,500 years old. Wow! What if they help us solve ancient civilization mysteries? Preliminary data suggests that all this underground space can be much more than a few empty chambers. There might be many more hidden structures near the Giza pyramids. How come? Well, the thing is, the structure appears to include hollowed-out sections with spiral pathways leading even deeper underground. Refining the images hinting at this could reveal an extensive subterranean network. It might be a whole city hidden under the surface. Now, despite the excitement surrounding these findings, there are also a lot of people who don't believe in the existence of the underground city. They're skeptical about the archaeological discovery in Egypt due to the lack of peer-reviewed verification. That's why several archaeologists and radar experts have challenged the validity of the claims. They've explained that the technology used to make the discovery may not be advanced enough to produce such detailed underground imagery. According to them, the 5 smaller chambers found near the surface could be natural formations, since the area had had sacred significance long before the construction of the pyramids. Some experts have even dismissed the use of radar methods in this context altogether. They call these methods scientifically unproven and question their accuracy. The discovery has also reignited discussions about ancient Egyptian myths and the possibility of hidden texts lying somewhere beneath the Giza pyramids. The layout of the newly detected underground chambers shares similarities with mythological accounts of the Hall of Records, a rumored chamber that could preserve early Egyptian wisdom. If confirmed, these findings could significantly reshape the understanding of Egypt's sacred topography. Plus, this lost city beneath Egypt's pyramid could become physical evidence of previously unknown underground structures. That's why the Khafre project is super eager to begin excavating to confirm their findings. But getting approval from Egyptian authorities is a challenging process. The discoveries still need to undergo peer review before they are accepted by the academic community. By the way, this recent archaeological discovery in Egypt comes on the heels of another discovery involving a weird structure beneath the Royal Giza Cemetery, which researchers believe is unnatural in origin. Archaeologists use remote sensing techniques and uncovered a mysterious L-shaped structure underground in the Western Cemetery of Giza. This area is known to house burials of royal family members and high-ranking officials. Many of the tombs in the cemetery have above-ground mastabas, rectangular stone or mud brick structures with flat roofs. But there is an area in the center of the cemetery where there are no above-ground structures. To investigate this unexplored region, the team used electrical resistive tomography and ground-penetrating radar. ERT works by sending electrical currents into the ground and measuring the resistance to detect remains. As for GPR, It sends radar into the ground and maps the structures based on the radar's return. The team found an anomaly about 6.5 feet beneath the surface. It appeared to be an L-shaped structure measuring at least 33 feet in length. The readings suggested that the structure had been backfilled with sand after its construction. This made the team hypothesize that it could be a mix of sand and gravel, or possibly an air void. This anomaly was classified as a highly resistive structure, which meant it didn't occur naturally. Motoyuki Sato, the study's lead author and professor at Tohoku University in Japan, claims that the structure is not a natural formation due to its sharp shape. Another weird thing about ancient Egyptian pyramids is that historians have long believed that they were built primarily for royals and high-status individuals who had the wealth and power to create such massive structures. However, new research from the archaeological site of Tombos in modern-day Sudan challenges this assumption. The thing is, Tombos' pyramid may have served as burial sites for low-status workers as well as elites. The hard-working members of ancient communities may have found their last resting place in some of the most visible monuments, including the pyramids. Located along the Nile River in the ancient region of Nubia, Tombos became part of Egypt after its conquest of the area around 1400 BCE. That's when Egypt established the site to strengthen its colonial control. Workers at Tombos built pyramids, but those were much more modest than the famous pyramids of Giza. The research team reanalyzed 110 human skeletons from Tombos, originally studied in 2012. In particular, they examined the entheses, the areas where tendons and ligaments attach to bones. Such an analysis can give us insights into the amount of physical labor a person performed. When someone does hard labor, their bones often develop distinct crests and ridges at these attachment points due to the stress on the tendons and ligaments. And while some skeletons showed little change in their entheses, suggesting they belonged to individuals from the upper classes, others showed more serious changes. It means they belong to lower-class workers. This finding can totally challenge our earlier understanding of pyramid burials, especially the idea that only elites were buried in the pyramids, because the pyramids themselves were designed for the elite. This recent research may prove that lower-class workers may have found their final resting place in these monumental structures too. Now, thousands of years ago, the Sahara Desert was a green valley with rivers, lakes, flowers, various animals, and people who had different DNA. They weren't visitors from another planet or some unknown separate species. In fact, they were quite normal, but their genetic code changed scientists' understanding of how human civilization developed. It sounds a little confusing, but let's start at the beginning. Among the endless dunes of the Sahara, there is a small rock shelter where wanderers can hide from the scorching sun. This place is called Takakori. Recently, it became famous because scientists found 2 mummies there who lived about 7,000 years ago. At that time, in China, people were learning to domesticate pigs. In Egypt, paintings with geometric patterns appeared. Almost everywhere in the world, people were developing agriculture. But what was happening in the Sahara? Scientists analyzed fragments of DNA from the mummies, along with other artifacts found in the cave. They discovered that the bodies belonged to female pastoralists. They lived during a time when the famous desert was known as the Green Sahara because of its humid climate and abundant vegetation. Those mummies belonged to a group of people of unknown origin. Their DNA did not contain the genes typically found in populations that lived in that region. In fact, their genome did not resemble any other known genetic lineage. Surely, there must have been relatives of these people living in other regions. A similar genetic code was found in the remains of hunter-gatherers in the Tafaralt cave located in Morocco. The DNA of the people from these 2 caves was equally distant from the DNA of people who lived in the southern part of the Sahara. Since their DNA was not similar to other genomes in the region, this tribe must have lived quite separately. They probably did not accept strangers and did not move from place to place. They simply didn't need to, since the Green Sahara had everything necessary for life: a good climate, water, and food. These Takakori people lived within their own community as if they were separate from everyone else. But then, how did they learn about animal husbandry? Today, breeding bulls, goats, and other animals seems completely natural, but in the distant past, it was a real breakthrough. Farming and cattle breeding technologies developed around the world during mass migrations. Imagine a small indigenous group living in the Green Sahara. Suddenly, thousands of outsiders who know agricultural techniques arrive from other regions. They take over the land, drive some locals away, allow others to stay, impose their own rules, and begin cultivating the soil. Their settlement grows, and then they migrate to another area where they spread their technologies again. That's how progress developed in the past, at least that is what scientists thought. Of course, during these migrations, different people mixed with each other, which introduced great diversity into the genetic code. But in the case of the Takakori tribe, there was no diversity. They were not attacked, and large-scale migrations did not affect them in any way. So the question arises, how did they know about cattle breeding? This is what surprised researchers. We were convinced that agriculture spread exclusively because of large-scale migrations. The discovered mummies showed scientists that people simply exchanged knowledge and culture. Perhaps a traveler came to the Takakori settlement, showed them how to breed animals, and left. No genetic mixing occurred, which is why they retained a distinct and separate genetic code. It's also possible that someone from Takakori traveled elsewhere and returned with new knowledge about herding. No one conquered anyone. No one imposed their knowledge or rules. In other words, they did what modern people do. They shared experience and knowledge. This small detail in the genome of the two mummies shows that the ancient world may not have been as cruel and harsh as we once imagined. In a sense, the genetic material inside those mummies tells the story of how the technological and cultural development of humankind has changed over time. But there's also the reverse situation, when the development and progress of human civilization shape our genome. What? It sounds strange. Do microwave ovens affect our DNA or something like that? No, it's much bigger than that. Our DNA was changed by fire. If you look at us through the eyes of nature, we are very strange creatures because of our weird relationship with one of the most dangerous elements in the world. But what's so strange about it? Well, just look at nature. Did you see how people in thrillers about wildlife scare away wolves and bears with fire? It's because it really may work, since many animals are afraid of fire and stay away from it. Some lizards learn how to survive wildfires by hiding in already burned bushes, places where the fire will not return. Evolution has made nearly all living creatures avoid fire, but not humans. We're the only species on the planet that does not run from fire but uses it. No other animals live under a constant risk of burns. Evolution was not prepared for this and had to rapidly adjust our genes to match our behavior. The technology of controlling fire is one of the oldest in the world. We used it to keep warm in cold climates, cook food, produce metal and ceramic objects, build homes, and conquer territories. We put hot food into our mouths and drink hot tea. We're the only creatures on the planet that voluntarily put a potentially dangerous source of heat into our mouths. And this has been happening for thousands of years. Fire is still an essential tool, and all this time, we've been getting burned. No other species on Earth experiences anything close to the number of fire-related damages that humans do. And it's not just about our past. Even today, we interact with burning gas stoves, red-hot car radiators, and boiling water in kettles and saucepans. What about risky equipment in factories? The danger has not disappeared. Surely every person has had a small accident with something extremely hot. I know I have. As a result, through evolution, we developed a unique genome unlike that of any other living being. When we touch something hot and our body begins to heal the damaged part, it feels like a natural ability. But this healing depends on specific genetic mechanisms. Without them, even a small accident could cause serious problems. The development of these genetic adaptations was a complex and lengthy process, since changes in DNA do not happen quickly. While humanity was adapting to fire, intense natural selection was taking place. Some scientists even suggest that we are descendants of those who recovered from burns more quickly than others. Of course, mammals also have adaptations related to fire. Scientists studying primate DNA discovered a set of 94 genes that activate in response to burns. So, what makes us different? In humans, some of these genes evolved much faster and became far more effective at healing and fighting bacteria. So, does it turn out that we have a superpower we never realized we had? Yes, but there's bad news. The same immune response that allows us to heal quickly from burns can also cause serious problems. How is that possible? Well, instead of using examples with real people, let us imagine a mannequin with the same fire-related adaptations as a human. When the mannequin receives a small burn, say from a hot radiator under a car hood, its immune system quickly triggers inflammation, during which immune cells neutralize the damage. It is an aggressive healing strategy, but it works. However, if the mannequin gets a large area burn, that same defense becomes dangerous. The immune system uses the same tactic for major burns as it does for minor ones, creating massive inflammation that can be life-threatening. Why is that? Because evolution developed protection against small incidents around a campfire, but not against massive fires. Interestingly, how do scientists explain our craving for extreme sports and adrenaline? What does our DNA say about this? Well, it's a whole new story. Most people know that pyramids were built as grand tombs for the pharaohs, designed to ensure they had a smooth journey to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, was constructed for the pharaoh Khufu. But what most people don't know is that this whole pyramid building trend started right here with the step pyramid of Djoser about 4,700 years ago. This massive structure was built for Pharaoh Djoser, a ruler from Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It rises 7 layers high above the ground and stands about 200 feet tall. We think of it today as a phenomenal architectural project, but for ancient Egyptians, the step pyramid of Djoser turned out to be more like a massive experiment, a trial run, if you will, to perfect their building skills before they moved on to even more ambitious pyramids. Reaching new heights is super exciting, but the real mystery is what is going on below the ground. In this pyramid's underground labyrinth, there is a network of tunnels stretching about 3.5 miles long, and some researchers believe these tunnels might have been part of a sophisticated water system that could completely change what we think about pyramid construction. Let's talk about this massive complex located in Saqqara. Surrounding the pyramid, there's what's known as a dry moat, a continuous trench that is up to 164 feet wide and almost 2 miles long. It forms a sort of rectangular shape around the pyramid. This trench has an average depth of about 65 feet. Now, if you were to add up all the earth and rock they dug out to create this moat, it would be about 10 times the volume of the step pyramid itself. For the longest time, people just assumed this trench was nothing more than a huge quarry, a place where they dug up stone and clay to build the step pyramid. Makes sense, right? But when you take a closer look, it doesn't add up. The trench is too narrow and deep to be practical for mining, and its layout doesn't match anything we know about ancient Egyptian quarrying methods. Plus, some sections of the trench are actually covered with a rocky ceiling, which would have made it nearly impossible to use as a quarry. Another theory suggests that the dry moat had some kind of spiritual significance. Maybe it was a sacred place, where souls of nobles gathered to serve the late king in the afterlife. There are even niches in the walls that work as a hint at this spiritual function. But most researchers believe that this purpose likely developed much later, long after the complex was built for Djoser. So, what was the moat really designed for? In 2020, a researcher came up with a pretty intriguing idea. It is possible that this trench was actually designed to collect and manage water, especially after heavy rainfalls. Now, that makes sense when you consider the location. The moat sits in an area that could easily have been flooded by runoff water from nearby plains. This could also explain why the trench wasn't used for new graves until much later when the climate became drier and less prone to flooding. The story becomes even more intriguing as this trench appears to be part of a larger, more complex hydraulic system within the Djoser complex. It is like the trench has several compartments, carefully carved out of the rock and connected by tunnels. These compartments likely served as a part of a water treatment system, where water would flow from one compartment to the next, getting cleaner as it moved along. Now, here is where things start to tie into the pyramid itself. The Djoser complex has a series of underground shafts, and some researchers think that water from the moat's deep trench might have been used to power a hydraulic lift system. And this giant water-powered elevator could have been used to raise the heavy stones needed to build the pyramid. It worked like a volcano, but instead of lava, water did the heavy lifting. Imagine a big deep hole in the ground at the center of the pyramid site. Inside this hole, there was a huge wooden platform, kind of like a giant raft that could move up and down. When the workers wanted to lift a heavy stone, they would fill the hole with water. As the water rose, the wooden platform started to float up, carrying the stone with it, almost like a giant water-powered elevator. When the stone reached the right height, the workers slid it off the platform and onto the pyramid. The idea is that water from the deep trench, after being cleaned and filtered, would flow into these shafts. A massive float, possibly made of wood, would then rise as the water filled the shaft, lifting the stones up to where they were needed for construction. Once the stone was in place, they'd let the water out, lowering the platform back down to the bottom, ready to lift the next stone. This fancy hydraulic lift system could have been a game changer, making the whole building process a lot faster and more efficient without using a lot of workforce. It is like the ancient Egyptians were already embracing the whole idea of work smarter, not harder. But of course, not everyone is on board with this theory. Some experts argue that the area where the step pyramid of Djoser was built couldn't have held enough water from occasional rains to maintain such a fancy hydraulic system. The main theory suggests that, in the past, there might have been some kind of lake nearby that would have filled up after a period of rain, and this lake could have supplied water to the complex's hydraulic system. But there is no mention of such a lake in any ancient Egyptian writings, so it might be more of a what-if situation than a reality. And then there's the issue of the hard work itself. Remember when I said this method could have allowed the ancient builders to raise stones with far less effort? Well, that might not be entirely true. According to some experts, just building this hydraulic device would have required a lot more heavy work than simply moving the stone blocks using good old-fashioned manpower. And let's not forget, the step pyramid of Djoser is like a baby pyramid compared to those that came later. The stones used for Djoser's pyramid weighed, on average, about 660 pounds each, which is nothing compared to the more than 2.5-ton blocks used later for the pyramid of Chephren. If this cool water lift theory gets completely ruled out, we still need to explain how this pyramid was built in the first place. To answer that, we need to rewind a bit and talk about the original plans. See, before Djoser's tomb became a pyramid, the idea was to construct a simple mastaba. This type of tomb was pretty common in earlier periods, a flat-roofed rectangular structure with sloping sides. But after the original mastaba was finished, they decided to expand it a bit by adding more layers on top. And then they added even more layers, until the construction reached 6 distinctive steps, each one smaller than the previous. And they probably did all this by raising those heavy stones using ramps, not a water-powered elevator. There is still so much we don't know about the step pyramid of Djoser. More research is definitely needed to fully understand how this system worked, or if it even existed at all. But the idea of using water to help build the pyramid adds a whole new layer to our understanding of ancient Egyptian engineering. It's a powerful reminder of just how clever and resourceful those builders were, using the natural landscape and the power of water to create one of the most iconic monuments in history.
What is a boat doing in the middle of a desert? You would expect to find a seagoing vessel closer to shore. This is the question archaeologists had been asking for decades. In 1988, there was a storm near one of the most important archaeological sites in ancient Egypt. A wooden structure emerged from the sand. It was hollowed out by termites. Scientists were determined to solve its mystery. In 2000, they began excavating the site near Abydos, Ubidos. An American team of experts soon discovered a boat that was 70 feet long, and it wasn't alone. In total, there were 14 boats neatly resting next to each other. It was impossible to completely dig out the boats because of their poor condition. Luckily, the wood was preserved enough to get a sample. Analyses revealed that the boats were around 5,000 years old, the oldest fleet in human history to this date. The time of their construction predates the pyramids at Giza by half a millennium. Each ship of the fleet rested in a vault that matched its dimensions. The room was roughly a third of the size of a tennis court. It had mud brick walls that featured more than 120 drawings of boats. Ancient Egyptians incised them on whitewashed walls that were excellently preserved. Scientists have known about these mysterious chambers for well over a century. 1901, 1902. A British archaeologist, Arthur Weigel, stumbled upon a strange structure west of the River Nile. His team caught a glimpse of the interior walls. Sadly, a section of the roof collapsed, so they had to call off further exploration. Researchers abandoned the site, but its location remained on the maps. The boat's position first led scientists to think that they rested on a bank of the mighty Nile. But there was a problem with this theory. Today, the river flows almost 7 miles west of Abydos. Further studies of the surrounding terrain showed the Nile didn't change its course throughout history. Also, if the boats floated near a dock, they would be in unstable positions. The 14 vessels at Abydos were perfectly parallel to each other. There was only one conclusion possible. Someone had deliberately placed them like that. They must have gone through a lot of effort. Each boat had enough room for up to 30 rowers. These vessels could really float. They weren't models, but scholars still don't know if they actually sailed any body of water in ancient Egypt. This doesn't diminish the importance of the find. Previously, archaeologists found only small-scale models. In King Tut's tomb alone, there were 35 boat models. For a long time, these figurines were the only clues as to how ancient Egyptian vessels looked like. The boat's design confirms that they were the real deal. They are the earliest surviving examples of something called built boats. Ancient people constructed primitive vessels by hollowing out large tree trunks. The alternative was reed that was tied together to form a raft. The boats at Abydos had planks tied together. This was a major breakthrough in shipbuilding. During their lifetime, the boats must have seemed impressive. Timber was a valuable commodity at the time. There was no wood in the desert. Cedar had to be imported from Lebanon. The only person who could afford such luxury was the pharaoh. Studying the area around the ancient fleet provided more answers. Scientists discovered a mud brick structure where Egyptians worshipped the pharaoh. Its approximate date of construction matches that of the wooden boats. The same bricks out of which this building was made were used to encase the fleet. At the time of their construction, the rooms they were stored in had a ceiling. That's the section that archaeologists stumbled upon in the early 20th century. Just like mummies and coffins, these marvelous ships rested inside splendid vaults. The exterior of these rooms was also impressive. The outer walls originally had a plaster of white limestone. It reflected sunlight. In the desert sun, the structure housing the boats must have shone from miles away. Ancient Egyptian builders used the same technique to cover the pyramids 500 years later. Today, their surface looks jagged, but it wasn't always like this. When they were constructed, the pyramids had a top layer of fine white limestone. Their surface was smooth and it gleamed in the sunlight. Instead of stairs, the outer layer of the pyramids was more of a sleek ramp. Archaeologists were left with one final question. Which pharaoh owned the fleet? The answer lay just a mile from the site. This is where the tomb of a pharaoh from the 5th dynasty rested, King Senwosret III. Its time and style of construction matched the ones of the chambers with boats. The very end of his rule might explain how the boats ended up in the middle of the desert. The pharaoh probably passed away in northern Egypt. Then his body was transported down the Nile to Abydos in a marvelous procession of decorated boats. The vessels were later lowered to chambers near the final resting place of their owner. This had a symbolic meaning. In the ancient Egyptians' belief system, ships played a key role. Their supreme deity was Ra. He traveled through the sky during the day in the form of the sun. At nighttime, he sailed through the netherworld in a solar boat. The pharaoh identified himself with Ra. That's why he needed boats in the afterlife. That was the only way to regenerate himself. Just as the sun rises every day above the horizon. This belief existed for thousands of years. The more famous Pharaoh Khufu also had a ship. Scientists found it in 1954 next to his pyramid at Giza. It is some 4 centuries younger than the fleet at Abydos, but Khufu's ship was almost 2 times longer. The Great Pyramid of Giza and King Tut's tomb are some of the most famous archaeological finds in Egypt. But there are many more secrets hiding beneath the endless sands of the Sahara Desert. Recently, 2020, archaeologists found a lost city there. They have labeled it as the most important discovery since King Tut's tomb, 1922. The city of Aten is some 3,000 years old. Historians hope it will give them a unique insight into the everyday life of ancient Egyptians. The famous archaeologist and Egyptologist Zahi Hawass proclaimed the site a lost golden city. Aten sits some 300 miles south of Egypt's capital, Cairo. It is close to the famous Valley of the Kings. Archaeologists first found sections of mud brick walls that spread out in all directions. They discovered complete rooms with tools of everyday life inside. The research team unearthed a bakery, a residential neighborhood, and an administrative district. They all date back to the time when the Egyptian civilization was the wealthiest in its long history. They were also the first to make objects from iron. In 1911, scientists found a set of iron beads near a village in Lower Egypt, El Gurza. These are the earliest known iron artifacts. The discovery is literally out of this world. Ancient people made them by beating into shape a piece of a meteorite. The 9 beads were once part of an ornate necklace. They are now blackened and corroded, which is perfectly normal for a piece of jewelry that is over 5,000 years old. They consist of an iron-nickel alloy. Researchers were impressed by the skill of ancient jewelers who processed the beads. Their craftsmanship is more impressive when you think that they didn't know the stellar origins of the material. The Great Pyramid of Giza also has a remarkable feature. An international research group investigated the electromagnetic response of the structure to radio waves. They found that the pyramid has the ability to concentrate electromagnetic energy inside it. This occurred inside its chambers as well as under the pyramid's base. It contains an underground, unfinished chamber. It seems that the electromagnetic response is connected with the properties of limestone, the Great Pyramid's main building material. The research results might have a practical application. The way solar cells and nanosensors function could be improved by this remarkable find.
Do you know what's cooler than ancient forms of art? Very ancient and creepy forms of art. One of these was found in a cave in Indonesia. On the wall, there was a strange drawing that was made about 67,800 years ago. What's also strange is that people were drawing at such an early time at all. Scientists used to believe that the human urge for creativity appeared much later, but let's step into the cave and take a closer look at this work. Scientists discovered a strange picture on the tropical island of Muna, off the southeastern coast of Sulawesi. Here, there is a cave that locals call Liang Metaduno. In a sense, this place can be called an exhibition of ancient art. Human figures, boats with people, riders, and other unusual drawings were painted here in red, brown, and black pigments. But recently, scientists found something even older and stranger. All the images in this cave were drawn several thousand years ago. However, the newly discovered drawing turned out to be more than 67,000 years old. So, on the ceiling, next to a brown drawing of a chicken, specialists discovered 2 hands. One of them had a pointy finger that resembled an animal's claw. So, what does it mean? Scientists believe that the author somehow expressed the relationship between humans and animals. But the very fact of drawing such a hand is also surprising. Usually in cave paintings, we see images of small human figures or animals. But here, the author decided to trace their own hand and add a claw to it. This work shows the artist's intention. They depicted something that doesn't exist, something their imagination invented. and they expressed it. What did they want to convey, and what were they feeling at that moment? Perhaps they experienced the agony of creativity. Perhaps, after finishing the drawing, they called their friends to come and evaluate it. Just imagine crowds of ancient cave people coming to an exhibition where a famous artist has created new work. Everyone looks at the clawed hand with admiration, applauds, and gives their own interpretation of the image. In our minds, it often seems that in ancient times, people were savages who understood very little. But what if they were not so different from us? They also loved art. They got angry, they felt envy, they felt sadness, and they experienced the same emotions. They lived just like we do, only without technology. Archaeological artifacts like this really help us better understand the development of humanity. But why do scientists think that it was a stencil of a human hand in the first place? Maybe it was some kind of creature like a yeti, and its hands really looked like animal paws. That's unlikely. Specialists say that handprints may have been connected with rituals meant to ward off misfortune. What if the author tried to scare away trouble with their hand and added a claw to make it more frightening? In general, after this discovery in Malaysia, researchers began to question the Eurocentric views about the intelligence of ancient people. For a long time, the scientific world believed that the cognitive abilities of modern humans began to develop when settlers migrated into Western Europe. But now, judging by what was found on the island of Muna, the development of humanity may have occurred independently in different parts of the planet. This discovery perfectly complements another collection of cave paintings in Indonesia. In 2019, scientists discovered images of human figures with the heads and tails of animals. These strange creatures were hunting warthogs and endemic dwarf buffalo. Perhaps the authors imagined themselves as these half-animal, half-human beings and wanted to give themselves the appearance of animals. These drawings are about 51,000 years old. The clawed hand is about 67,800 years old, which makes it the oldest known example of cave art in the world. Now let's move to a more recent period, the 15th century. By that time, many works of art had already been created and many books had been written. But there is one thing that still remains one of the most mysterious and even eerie works ever made. This is the Voynich manuscript. On the outside, it looks like a small book filled with drawings of various plants, flowers, astronomical pictures, and people. All of these illustrations are accompanied by extensive comments from the author. Everything looks quite natural for a book from the 1400s. But do you know what the problem is? The language in which the book is written is still unknown. The drawings on its pages also depict unknown plants. There are strange patterns, formulas, and mysterious images of people. All of this resembles some kind of book of magic. It also looks like an encyclopedia of an alternative world or a textbook on potion making. But how is it possible that with all our modern technology, we still have not deciphered this language and these images? Who was the author? What did they want to tell us? And who exactly was this Voynich? A book dealer and antique shop owner named Wilfrid Voynich discovered this manuscript in an Italian monastery in 1912 and immediately added it to his collection. The strange contents of the book quickly attracted the attention of scientists. For decades, historians, linguists, programmers, and other specialists tried to figure out what was written on its pages, but no one succeeded. Of course, there were theories. Some scientists believed it was written in Hebrew. Botanists suggested that the language in the manuscript had Mexican origins. On one hand, it could be an unknown language that disappeared. On the other hand, it could be some kind of cipher. But who was the author? There were theories that the manuscript was written by the English philosopher and scientist Roger Bacon. Some were convinced that the work belonged to Leonardo da Vinci, but there was no confirmation. The most plausible theory says that the manuscript was written in a lost language that was once spoken in the Mediterranean during the medieval period. People spoke it, but didn't use it in official or important documents. Another version says that it could be some long-forgotten Middle Eastern or Asian language. Okay, let's assume that's true and the book is written in a language everyone forgot. But what about those strange drawings? The plants? The astronomical images? The unusual patterns? What are they? Perhaps it's a large encyclopedia about pharmacy, nature, and space, a treatise about the natural world, or something like that. You can build many theories and hypotheses, but do you know what's really cool? You can try to solve the mystery of this strange book yourself. The entire Voynich manuscript has been scanned in high quality and published online. Try to decipher it and write in the comments what you managed to discover. Our next archaeological artifact is even stranger than the previous one. In the 1700s, fishers in Japan cast a net into the sea and pulled out a mummified mermaid. Of course, officially it wasn't a real mermaid, but it looked very realistic and even creepy. For a long time, people kept this find in a museum and considered it a sacred object. But what if it really was something like a mermaid? What if, long ago, some kind of aquatic people lived in the ocean? To confirm these theories, scientists analyzed the find and determined that the object was artificial. Some talented person used bones, the skin of a pufferfish, and animal fur to create this grotesque figure. But it was not just a sculpture. According to specialists, it was a talisman that was supposed to provide its owner with a long life. Let's finish our story with something truly frightening and eerie. You probably know that centuries ago, people in Europe believed in vampires. Yes, you can find many books and historical records about them, but they all appear to be legends. However, several years ago, archaeologists discovered rather chilling evidence that people believed in these stories very strongly. Specialists found a burial in Poland that was more than 400 years old. It contained the skeleton of a young woman. A sickle had been attached across her neck, and a padlock had been fastened to the big toe of her left foot. Scientists suggested that the locals were afraid this woman might become a vampire and rise from the grave. So just in case, they took precautions and added these objects to her body. This is not a dune set. This is a very real desert in Niger. Jado was probably built by the nomadic Sao people and is filled with ksars, which are fortified houses made of salt and clay, with giant walls and secret passages. Located deep in the desert, it was once a vital stop for trans-Saharan caravans, but is now a hotspot for smugglers and bandits. The site has been off-limits since 2002 due to its dangers. The origin of the ksars remain a mystery. No archaeological studies have been conducted, leaving many questions unanswered. Even today, shifting sands reveal and conceal parts of these ancient ruins, fueling local speculation about what might still be hidden beneath the desert. Speaking of connective tunnels, scientists were blown away by the discovery of lava tubes in Saudi Arabia. These underground passages form when molten lava cools down. Researchers believe that ancient nomadic groups may have utilized these tunnels to survive the super harsh desert climates. While excavating the tunnels, archaeologists uncovered artifacts, rock art, and skeletal remains. The art and animal bones show that the people who used the tunnels were probably sheep and goat herders. They're still piecing together whether these groups lived in the tunnels for extended periods or just used them as temporary shelters. The Great Pyramid of Giza has been standing for thousands of years, but it's still hiding secrets. Using special scanning technology, scientists found two hidden structures under an ancient burial ground. The first is a shallow L-shaped structure, and below it is a much larger space that could be a final resting place or a chamber. The smaller structure was filled with sand on purpose, while the deeper one might be an empty chamber. Experts believe the two are connected, possibly as an entrance leading to a secret chamber. This is big news because it might give us some more insight into who built the pyramids and why. The world is full of ancient writing, but some messages refuse to give up their secrets, like the mystery of the Bash Plemi tablet. This unusual stone, pulled from a lake in Georgia, is covered in symbols no one can read. Even with modern technology, experts are completely stumped.
The tablet is about the size of a book, with 60 symbols carefully carved into its surface, but 39 of them don't match any known language. Some resemble scripts from ancient civilizations in the Middle East, India, and Egypt, but none are an exact match. To make things even trickier, part of the tablet is broken off, meaning a piece of the puzzle is missing forever. To rule out a hoax, scientists studied the tablet closely. They confirmed it's made of vesicular basalt, an extremely tough local rock. Whoever carved these symbols must have been really skilled. Based on similar archaeological finds, experts believe the tablet could date back thousands of years, possibly to the late Bronze or early Iron Age. Some symbols repeat, which could mean they're numbers. Maybe it's an inventory list, a record of battles, or even an offering to the deities. Until someone cracks the code, the Bashplemi tablet remains an unsolved mystery from the depths of history. Experts are still stumped with what this Minoan disk might mean. The Phaistos disk is one of the most mysterious finds from the Minoan civilization. This 6-inch clay object, discovered in 1908, has strange spiral markings that no one has fully decoded yet. The disk has 241 symbols on both sides, showing everything from people and animals to tools and plants. Experts have come up with many theories about what the symbols mean. Some think it's an early form of Greek. Others suggest it's a prayer or a hymn. And some even believe it could be a letter from a king in Anatolia to a Greek ruler. Let's see who will be the first to figure this out. It's always a fun day at an archaeologist's office when they find something as big as a 2,000-year-old marble head. A French archaeologist mission went digging inside an old medieval house near Alexandria in Egypt and found a statue's head depicting an old, possibly ill man. This statue dates from the last Egyptian dynasty before it became part of the Roman Empire, and the site where it was found is associated with the likes of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For archaeologists, even the smallest finds at this site means a lot. You've heard of Lucy, right? The Australopithecus that was an early ancestor for us humans. Well, scientists found some of her species' footprints somewhere in Tanzania. The so-called Laetoli footprints are over 3 million years old. The trail stretched 88 feet and has about 70 footprints, left behind when a bunch of early humans walked across some wet volcanic ash. What's cool is that these early humans were already walking on 2 feet, like us, not all hunched over like apes. The close spacing of the prints shows they probably had short legs and a shorter stride than we do today. In an ancient Egyptian temple, archaeologists uncovered a shrine unlike any other, a place dedicated to falcons and 2 mysterious deities. One deity had a falcon's head, while the other wore a crown with a sun disk and cow horns. But the most baffling discovery was an inscription that read, "It is improper to boil a head in here." At the heart of the shrine, there are 15 headless falcons carefully arranged on a pedestal, likely as offerings to the falcon-headed deity. One theory suggests the birds were boiled first, perhaps to pluck their feathers, before being placed in the shrine, following the strange rule carved into stone. Archaeologists also found a 13-inch iron harpoon nearby. Its true purpose remains unknown, although the shrine also held remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggs, suggesting that the rituals may have included feasting. And speaking of ancient Egypt, meet Hathor. Scientists named her after the ancient Egyptian deity of motherhood, music, and singing. This wooden statue, housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was thought to be just a beautiful artifact, until a surprising secret was uncovered. Using an X-ray machine, experts found a mechanical operating system inside it, with pulleys and axles connecting her shoulder to her left leg. When activated, the system made her hand raise and lower, an engineering marvel from over 3,000 years ago. The statue was created during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, and is often compared to 19th century automata due to its advanced design. It's believed the statue was used in religious ceremonies, symbolizing Hathor's role in dance and music. An unexpected discovery happened in northern Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti-Polish team uncovered a mysterious 7,500-year-old statue. The statue features an elongated skull, no mouth, narrow eyes, and a flattened nose. This feature is thought to be an Ophidian figurine, named after the Greek word for snake, and it was likely made by the Ubaid culture, a civilization known for their pottery skills. While no one knows exactly what role this weird statue played, it might have been linked to rituals or symbolic practices. Some scientists think these figurines, found in homes or final resting places, were tied to important cultural beliefs. We couldn't mention unresolved mysteries of this world without speaking about these elongated skulls. In the deserts of Peru, researchers uncovered 5 ancient skeletons, 2 with unnaturally elongated skulls. While head shaping was common in many cultures, these skulls defy explanation. Local legends tell tales of the so-called gentiles, a mysterious race banished underground by the powerful deities. Some say this is what the skulls represent. Others think this is some type of genetic anomaly, which was confirmed after finding an infant skull, too large to be artificially shaped. X-rays are a type of invisible radiation that can pass through our bodies and objects. They're very important in the field of medicine because they allow doctors to see inside our bodies without having to perform surgery. Now, let's dive into how X-rays work. They're a kind of electromagnetic radiation, just like light or radio waves. However, they have much higher energy than light, which makes them able to go through objects that light cannot. Imagine you have a powerful flashlight. If you try to shine it through a wall, the light won't go through because the wall is too thick. But these rays have enough energy to go through walls and even our bodies. The discovery of X-rays happened by accident in the late 19th century. A scientist was experimenting with cathode rays, which are a type of radiation. He was working in his lab and noticed that a nearby fluorescent screen started to glow, even though it was not directly exposed to the cathode rays. He realized that something invisible was causing the fluorescence, and he named it X-ray, because X is the mathematical symbol for something unknown. He continued experimenting with such rays and discovered that they could pass through many objects, like flesh and bones, but not through denser materials like metal. He also found that X-rays could create images on photographic plates, just like a camera takes pictures. The way this works is quite fascinating. Imagine you're standing in front of a bright light and you hold your hand in front of your face. Your hand blocks the light and you can't see through it. But if you place a sheet of tissue paper in front of your hand, some light will pass through, and you'll be able to see the outline of your hand. X-rays work in a similar way. When a doctor wants to take an X-ray of a part of your body, they will ask you to stand or lie down next to a machine. This device has a special plate that can capture the image. Let's say the doctor wants to further examine your arm. They will place the X-ray plate on one side of your arm and the machine on the other side. Then, the machine will produce a controlled burst of X-rays that pass through your arm. Remember how we talked about the tissue paper allowing some light to pass through? Well, in this case, some of those X-rays will go through your arm, while others will be absorbed or blocked by the denser parts of your body, like bones. The plate captures the X-rays that pass through your arm, and it creates an image. This image shows the bones and other structures inside your body, allowing the doctor to see if there are any problems or injuries. Now, you might be wondering why X-rays can pass through some things but not others. It has to do with the density and composition of the objects. Denser materials like bones absorb more X-rays, so they appear white in the image. So when you look at the result, you'll see your bones as white shapes. Other tissues, like muscles and organs, are less dense and allow some of those rays to pass through, so they appear as gray shadows. What if I told you there's a whole new way you can peek inside objects, but without using X-rays? I'm not talking about magic powers. Take a comfortable seat while I explain what myography is. This fascinating scientific technique allows us to see inside objects and even beneath the Earth's surface using a special type of particle called a muon. These elementary particles are very similar to electrons, but they're much heavier. They are created high up in the Earth's atmosphere when cosmic rays, which are particles coming from space, collide with the air molecules. Now, muons are special because they can pierce through different materials. They can pass through rock, soil, and even buildings. Scientists realized this potential back in the 1950s when they were studying cosmic rays and noticed that some of the particles could pass through thick materials. The first muography experiments took place in the 60s. Specialists discovered that muons can be detected using special devices called muon detectors. These detectors are usually placed underground or in specially designed laboratories to shield them from other particles and background radiation. Now let's dive into how muography actually works. Imagine you have a large object, like a pyramid, a mountain, or even an ancient statue, and you want to see what's inside without damaging it. First, detectors are positioned around the object or in the area you want to examine. These detectors are sensitive to muons and can track their paths. When such a particle passes through a detector, it leaves a trace, like footprints in the sand. By collecting data from multiple detectors, scientists can reconstruct the paths. Here's where things get really cool. The Earth's atmosphere acts like a natural filter for muons. It turns out that the more massive an object is, the more particles it will block. So, if you have a large, dense object like a mountain, fewer muons will pass through it compared to a smaller, less dense object, like an empty box. This difference in the number of particles that reach the detectors can give us clues about what's inside the objects. Scientists use computer algorithms and mathematical techniques to analyze the data and create images. These images represent the density distribution of the object being studied. It's like creating a map that shows where the densest areas are and where there's gaps inside the object. The concept of muography is similar to using shadows to understand the shape and size of an object. Imagine you're standing in front of a bright light and you place your hand between the light source and a wall. You'll see a shadow of your hand on the wall. Based on the shape and size of the shadow, you can get an idea of what your hand looks like, even though you can't see it directly. This technique has been used to study various objects and structures. For example, scientists have used it to explore the inside of volcanoes and pyramids, and even to investigate the structure of mountains and the Earth's crust. With the help of this amazing technique, scientists have now uncovered new information about the Great Pyramid of Giza. They discovered something that had eluded tomb raiders for centuries. They found a hidden chamber. And guess what they named it? The Big Void. Yeah, I know, not the most creative name. They even used 3 different muon detection techniques just to be super sure that it was indeed a big, mysterious void inside the grandest pyramid of them all. Once news got out about this mind-boggling discovery, Egyptian authorities couldn't resist the temptation to explore further. So, they brought in an endoscope camera to confirm the existence of this epic void. So, they inserted a camera through one of the openings underneath the entrance, and voila! It revealed a corridor. More so, the corridor had a chevron ceiling. I can't help but imagine the ancient Egyptians using it as a cool dance floor. Another team of scientists decided to take another shot at scanning this newfound void. According to them, the Great Pyramid of Giza is a pioneer in the pyramid game. It used a technique called chevron to cover internal structures and keep them from collapsing. Now, why did the ancient Egyptians build this corridor and the grand void it leads to? One theory suggests that the corridor was built to relieve pressure inside the pyramid. Another theory says that the void could be a result of the pyramid's construction process. It could have been an internal ramp used to move roof blocks into position, and then it was left there or filled loosely with rubble. According to other enthusiastic explorers, there might be another burial chamber waiting to be discovered. They believe that the pyramids were built with a dash of randomness in the construction process. As the builders worked their magic, they realized that some chambers wouldn't be able to handle the weight of a majestic sarcophagus. So they made adjustments on the fly, creating new plans as they went along.
You have heard about Nikola Tesla. You have definitely heard about the Great Pyramids in Egypt. But what if I told you that Tesla may have probably uncovered the ancient mysteries surrounding the pyramids? Wait, what? Is this a crossover episode? Nope. It's highly probable that the secrets of the pyramids are hidden in plain sight. But first, let's recap what we know about the pyramids. What's so mysterious about them? I mean, they are just old quirky buildings, aren't they? One of the biggest questions is how they were built. Some people think that the pyramids were created by people using only their hands and muscles. But others think that there might have been some kind of crazy energy source that we don't know about yet. Like, what if aliens helped out or something? Just kidding. But this idea of some unknown energy source being used to build the pyramids has been around for ages. Even in old texts, like the pyramid texts, it talks about how the gods gave us something to build a great power. So maybe there was something really powerful and mysterious going on back then? Who knows? Back in the early 1900s, he got obsessed with the Great Pyramids of Egypt. He read numerous books about these ancient structures and was blown away by how much energy they seemed to have. At that time, not many people knew much about electricity, and Tesla started to wonder if there was some kind of advanced tech hidden in the pyramids. He had an idea that the power of the pyramids had to do with electromagnetism, and he put a lot of time and effort into trying to figure out the mystery. Tesla had some pretty unusual theories about the Great Pyramids. He thought that they could actually store and move electricity, which could then be used to power up the areas around them. He also had this theory that the pyramids were built using some kind of crystal energy. He believed that the chambers inside the pyramids could have these super powerful crystals that could control the electromagnetic fields. But that's not all. Tesla also had this idea that the materials used to make the pyramids had properties that allowed them to trap energy from the sun and the moon. And not just a little bit of energy. He thought that the pyramid could actually create this massive energy field that could light up whole cities or even brighten up dark places. He thought that the pyramids could be used as giant power plants to generate electricity and run machines. Tesla even believed that the pyramids were somehow linked to cosmic energy, which could be used for spiritual enlightenment and healing. How very new age of him. Anyway, Tesla wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air. He was seriously into studying everything he could about the pyramids, from ancient artifacts and texts to hieroglyphs and drawings. And he came up with this idea that the pyramids were designed to be energy amplifiers, and some kind of unknown energy source was used during their construction. Some people thought Tesla was eccentric for coming up with these theories, but his ideas have actually had a huge impact on the way we think about the pyramids today. Researchers and scholars have been digging into his theories for years and using them to uncover some of the biggest mysteries surrounding these ancient structures. For example, recently scientists have used theoretical physics to investigate how the Great Pyramid of Egypt would react to certain radio waves. They found out that if the radio waves were a certain length, the pyramid could concentrate the energy inside its rooms and focus it under its base. The scientists did lots of calculations to figure this out. They first thought about what radio wavelengths would work best. Then they made a model of how the pyramid would react to the waves. They figured out how much of the energy from the waves would get absorbed or spread out. Lastly, they checked how the energy would move around inside the pyramid when the waves hit it. To help explain all of this, the scientists use something called multipole analysis. This is when you take a complicated object and break it down into simpler parts. Then you can see how each part interacts with the energy that's coming in. It's like taking apart a puzzle to see how each piece fits together. The researchers are interested in how all of this can be used in the future. They want to make really tiny particles that can do the same thing as the pyramid, but with light. By changing the size, shape, and the material of these particles, they can control how the light moves around them. This can be really useful for things like making tiny sensors or super efficient solar cells. The scientists had to make some guesses when they were doing their research. They assumed that there weren't any hidden spaces inside the pyramid, and that the material used to build it was all the same. But even with these guesses, they still made some pretty impressive discoveries. But the pyramid study is not the only proof that Tesla was ahead of his time. There are more Tesla's projects that seemed unrealistic at the time, but that scientists and enthusiasts reevaluate and try to implement today. Let's talk about Tesla's most ambitious project, the Wardenclyffe Transmission Tower. Back in 1900, Tesla was already a big shot when it came to electrical engineering in America. People were blown away by his amazing inventions and the fact that he managed to outdo Thomas Edison in the battle of currents. However, Tesla wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He decided to embark on his most ambitious project yet, the transmission tower at Wardenclyffe. It was built between 1901 and 1905, and it was based on one of Tesla's breakthrough ideas. He had a vision to make the impossible possible by creating a global wireless communication system. It would use Earth itself as a conductor, transmitting music, news, stock market reports, secured military communications, and even facsimile images. Does it sound familiar? Right, it sounds just like the internet that we use today, only without the use of any wires. But Tesla had a much bigger dream in mind, to transmit power wirelessly. He already proved that high-frequency signals could be sent without any wires using his Tesla coil transformers, and this sparked his obsession with wireless energy transmission. His vision was to not only transform the way we communicate, but also to find a way to transfer power currents globally by tapping into the Earth's natural energy. Tesla believed that there was an abundance of free energy all around us that could be used for humanity's benefit. In 1899, he conducted some top-secret experiments and got convinced that it was possible to transmit electrical power through the Earth's upper atmosphere. This is actually how the Wardenclyffe Tower was created. It was supposed to be the prototype station for a network of towers all over the globe that would provide the whole world with wireless energy. Unfortunately, Tesla didn't have the resources or the patience of his investors to bring this project to fruition. It ran into all sorts of financial problems and roadblocks, and in 1917, the unfinished tower was finally torn down for scrap metal to pay off Tesla's mounting debts. Now it remains a sad reminder that even the greatest minds can sometimes fall short of their dreams. The original red brick laboratory, however, is still there, and it is the only Tesla lab that has survived. Fun fact, in 2017, a film crew made a crazy discovery. They used ground-penetrating radar to explore the area around Wardenclyffe, and they found a whole series of tunnels stretching for hundreds of feet underneath the site. Nobody knows exactly what these tunnels were used for, but people have been speculating for years that they were part of Tesla's grand plan. Wardenclyffe, of course, is a major landmark for Tesla enthusiasts from all over the world. Who knows? Maybe someone will finally crack the mystery of the tunnels one day. But even if they don't, the legacy of Tesla and his amazing ideas lives on.
Beneath the sands of Luxor, scientists found something that was perhaps never meant to be found. Over 1,000 decorated stone blocks that belonged to the ruined temple of a woman pharaoh. It got us thinking, why was this temple so brutally destroyed, and who was this woman? Her name is Hatshepsut, and she is now considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, but for a long time, history almost forgot her. She ruled during the 18th dynasty, from around 1479 to 1458 BCE. She's remembered for her ambitious building projects, successful military campaigns, and flourishing trade expeditions. It turns out she was one out of 4 women to take the title of pharaoh in Egyptian history. The next woman would have to wait for 1,500 years to reign, and that woman we know as Cleopatra. The story of how Hatshepsut got to be a pharaoh is the most colorful part of this tale. As far as most dynastic rules go, it's usually men that are first in line for royal thrones. In Egypt, that was the same. That's why, when Pharaoh Thutmose I had a daughter as his firstborn, that was a big no-no as far as his succession line went. A few years later, Pharaoh Thutmose I passes away. The crown passed to Thutmose II, who ruled briefly, only to leave the throne to his infant son, Thutmose III. In this scenario, Hatshepsut was this pharaoh's stepmother. So what happened was that Hatshepsut served as advisor to her stepson, since he was too young to rule on his own. But after 7 years, she made an unprecedented move. She decided to seize power and declared herself Pharaoh of Egypt. Now this was not a simple power grab. Hatshepsut understood that if she wanted to rule, she had to present herself as a legitimate king. In a bold move, she adopted the full royal regalia, including the false beard traditionally worn by male pharaohs. She was often depicted in statues and hieroglyphs as a man, wearing the pharaoh's kilt and headdress. But this wasn't about disguising herself. Experts believe she never tried to hide her identity. Inscriptions on her statues often included feminine titles, like Daughter of Re, or grammatical structures that combined male and female terms, such as His Majesty herself. This showed that while she adopted traditional symbols of kings, she still acknowledged her true gender. But she needed to go even further. To legitimize her rule, she crafted an elaborate origin story. She claimed that the deity Amun himself had visited her mother in the form of her father, Thutmose I, and that she was his divine daughter. Now this was no small claim, since pharaohs were seen as deities on earth. By aligning herself with Amun, she strengthened her right to the throne. In temple carvings, she depicted this divine birth with Amun, presenting her as his rightful heir. These narratives weren't just mythology, they were tools, ensuring her position remained unchallenged. Hatshepsut also took a new name, Ma'at-Kari, which translates roughly to "Truth is the soul of the sun god." The word Ma'at was central to Egyptian beliefs. It represented order, justice, and divine balance. Pharaohs were expected to uphold Ma'at to ensure Egypt's stability. By calling herself Ma'at-Kari, Hatshepsut was likely reinforcing that she was a legitimate and rightful ruler. Her reign was truly great. She led Egypt into an era of peace and prosperity, launching massive building projects and restoring temples across the kingdom. Her most famous achievement was the construction of her temple at Deir el-Bahari, a pretty impressive architectural masterpiece carved into the cliffs of Luxor. Hatshepsut initiated one of the most ambitious construction projects in ancient Egyptian history, commissioning monuments, temples, and obelisks to immortalize her reign. It's argued that she continued with the construction of the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a grand road lined with statues leading to the Karnak Temple. For many, her shining architectural achievement was the towering obelisk she had carved from single pieces of granite. One of these, weighing over 320 tons, still stands today. Now, beyond building, she expanded Egypt's influence through trade. She sent an expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, believed to be modern-day Somalia or Eritrea, bringing back riches like gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Her fleet of ships sailing the Red Sea marked the first recorded trade mission of its kind, establishing economic ties that would benefit Egypt for generations. Yet, for all of her success, something strange happened after Hatshepsut passed away. Her successor, aka her stepson Thutmose III, who had been overshadowed by her rule, took a drastic step. He ordered her name to be erased from history. Her statues were defaced, her inscriptions chiseled away, and her achievements credited to other rulers. It was as if she had never existed. Some believe Thutmose III wanted to reclaim his rightful place as pharaoh, while others suggest that later rulers, uncomfortable with the idea of a female pharaoh, sought to restore traditional male dominance. The story gets even more tragic. The power struggle between stepmother and stepson continues, since, even after her passing away, Thutmose III built his own temple right next to Hatshepsut's at the Valley of the Kings. But he built his temple with one deliberate modification. His monument was built 11 feet higher than hers. Mind you that this was no accident, it was a symbolic statement. He wanted to overshadow her legacy. But history had other plans. Hatshepsut's legacy started to be rediscovered in the 19th century, and it was only through careful archaeological investigation that her reign was properly recognized. Today, Hatshepsut is remembered as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Her reign, once erased, has been reconstructed through constant archaeological discoveries, proving that her power and influence could not be so easily forgotten. Her resting place had been hidden in plain sight, her body removed from its original chamber in an effort to erase her from history. This final piece of evidence cemented her legacy, proving that even attempts to erase a pharaoh could not really do it. Hatshepsut's grand temple, Djeser-Djeseru, was a stunning architectural feat, designed to immortalize her reign and solidify her divine connection to Amun. But after her death, her successor, Thutmose III, launched that calculated effort to erase her legacy, and parts of her temple were dismantled. Historians still debate why. Was it a dynastic power move, an attempt to restore traditional male rule, or a bid to strengthen Thutmose III's claim to the throne? Maybe he was just a jerk. Whatever the reason, the destruction wasn't immediate. It happened decades after her death, suggesting it might not have been a personal revenge, but a broader political strategy. Yet, despite these efforts, her temple endures, and so does her story, a defiant echo of Egypt's first great female pharaoh. Let's travel through space and time to another place. Dashur, Egypt, is known to be home to several resting places of people from ancient Egypt. In the year 2017, scientists uncovered a long-lost pyramid. They quickly called the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities because they suspected it was going to be a big deal. Unlike most pyramids that were found in the area, this one was completely sealed. Lifting the capstone was a delicate process. When they finally managed to open the pyramid, they expected to find an undisturbed chamber. Instead, it was chaos. The place had been looted, and the personal items of the person that had passed away were scattered all over. But in the middle of the wreckage, they found a chest. Using the latest scanning technology, they managed to read the damaged hieroglyphs on its surface. What they found was unbelievable. The name inscribed there was as clear as day: Princess Hatshepsut. Ooh. The discovery made in 2017 also opened up a lot of questions. After further analysis, scientists discovered the remains belonged to another Hatshepsut. It belonged to a princess that lived during Egypt's 13th dynasty. The fact that her resting place had been looted before it was sealed made scientists wonder, were these ancient people trying to hide something about this public figure? And why is there almost no record about her in ancient Egyptian history? Ooh, stay tuned.
Thousands of years ago, way before cranes, engines, or electricity, the ancient Egyptians pulled off one of the greatest architectural feats ever: the pyramids. The massive stone blocks, some weighing as much as a Range Rover, sitting at a height of over 200 feet, seemed so unreal that many even believed ETs helped build them. But new research shows the secret was actually right here on Earth. The Egyptians probably used a giant ancient water elevator to move those heavy stones for their very first pyramid, the Step Pyramid of Djoser, around 4,700 years ago. Now, the first question that comes to mind is, where did they find such huge amounts of water to run this construction in the middle of the desert? Some studies say that the Sahara Desert had more regular rainfall thousands of years ago than it does today. So, the landscape resembled a savanna, not a desert. So it was possible there was enough natural water to support the hydraulic lift. Researchers found deep vertical shafts inside the first stone pyramid. They used a computer model that had info about the pyramid's remaining inside parts and the underground tunnels at the site. The team also used high-resolution satellite pictures of the area to include the amount of rainfall from the past in their research. It looks like the Egyptians would place a heavy stone block on top of a floating wooden platform, kind of like a raft, then slowly fill the shaft with water. and the rising water would lift the platform and the stone upwards, sort of like an ancient elevator in action. This cool process is called hydraulic lifting, and it's very similar to how some modern machinery works. But when the Egyptians used it, I mean, if they ever did, they would have had to do it with the most basic tools and a really advanced understanding of how water behaves. They would have to carefully control the amount of water added to each shaft to raise the stone blocks gradually and stop at the desired level to move the stones into place. The scientists now want to find out if it was the first major system of this kind, or if someone had used it before the Egyptians. Now, not all archaeologists fully agree with this idea. Some point out there is no direct evidence like writings or diagrams from that time that would prove the Egyptians actually used a hydraulic lift system, whether or not they actually used this exact method. One thing is clear. The people who built the step pyramid were geniuses in their own right. They figured out how to move massive stones all the way to the top of the pyramid with incredible precision, and used techniques that still impress scientists today. West of the pyramid, archaeologists found some evidence of a human-made lake or reservoir. They believe the Egyptians may have created this temporary lake and used channels or canals to move the water toward the pyramid. The pyramid itself may have been surrounded by a moat that helped direct water into these vertical shafts. There's even an enormous stone structure nearby, which could have acted like a dam. It stored and filtered water in the amounts they needed. In fact, scientists have discovered that 31 pyramids are likely to have been built along a long-lost ancient branch of the River Nile. It is now hidden under desert and farmland. For many years, archaeologists have thought that ancient Egyptians must have used a nearby waterway to transport materials, equipment, people, and whatever else they needed to build the pyramids on the river. But up until recently, they weren't certain of the location, shape, size, or proximity of this waterway to the site of the pyramids. They used radar satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to map the river branch. The scientists believe that a huge drought and sandstorms buried it thousands of years ago. They managed to go below the surface of the sand and get images of some hidden features, thanks to radar technology. The team found hidden rivers and ancient structures running at the foothills of where most of the ancient Egyptian pyramids lie. The discovery of this extinct river branch could explain why there are so many pyramids between Gaza and Lisht in what is now an inhospitable area of the Saharan desert. And if it wasn't cool enough, the area seems to have had a kind of water filtration system. Looks like they built it using a series of stone compartments that look surprisingly similar to modern water treatment plants. So, the Egyptians probably weren't just filling up the shafts with any water. They may have been managing and purifying it. They wanted to make sure it was clean and flowing in the right amounts, not to damage the pyramid or flood the area. Alright, water transportation is a complex issue. But even the most basic things, like how many sides the Great Pyramid of Giza has, can still surprise us. It's not 4, as you might logically conclude. It's not even 5 or 3, but 8. In 1926, a British pilot flew over the pyramid and took photos from above, and only then officially confirmed it. From that high-up view, he noticed that each of the pyramid's 4 faces is slightly indented down the middle, from top to bottom. These shallow inward dips make each face split into 2 halves, turning the pyramid into something more like an octagon. That indentation is so subtle you'd never see it standing next to the pyramid, but from the air, it becomes obvious. This odd shape may have actually helped keep the pyramid stable for over 4,500 years. The special inward-sloping design, plus a super strong base, could have helped it survive all kinds of natural disasters, like earthquakes, heavy rains, and constant pressure from its own massive weight. The pyramid has likely faced over 500 severe rainstorms in its lifetime, and thanks to its design, the pyramid's angled stone layers may have actually gotten stronger over time, kind of like how a screw tightens when you turn it. If the pyramid had been built with totally flat and level stone layers, it might have started to fall apart instead. The latest news from the pyramids is that there could be a massive ancient city hidden deep beneath them. Two scientists announced that they used a new method to read data from a technology called synthetic aperture radar, SAR. It's kind of like X-ray vision for the ground, and satellites normally use it to look beneath Earth's surface. So they say that with this cool tech, they managed to spot giant structures over a mile underground, directly beneath the Pyramid of Khafra at Giza. The scientists found 8 deep shafts surrounded by spiral paths, all leading to 2 enormous cube-shaped chambers, each one almost 300 feet wide. There are 5 more structures above the shafts, all connected by tunnels. All this might be part of a prehistoric underground city or even an ancient power station. The idea isn't new. A long time ago, the ancient Greek historian Herodotus already talked about hidden chambers under the pyramids. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, similar rumors popped up again. Then, in the 20th century, an American psychic claimed there was a hall of records buried under Giza. This new case is different because the people who announced it have real scientific backgrounds, hold doctorates, and claim to have invented a new type of scanning method. But still, many experts are skeptical about this finding. No one has officially proved or tested this new technology that they rely on. They base their reconstructions on imaginative guesses and not hard evidence. And most importantly, the claims don't fit with what archaeologists already know about the area from actual excavations. So until there's solid, peer-reviewed evidence, the idea of a lost city under the pyramids will remain just an idea. A drought that lasted for centuries may have changed the fate of the island of Rapa Nui more than any dramatic story you've ever heard about the Moai. That slow, grinding lack of water may have quietly reshaped where people lived, how they organized their society, and why those giant stone faces stand exactly where they do. The standard Rapa Nui story goes like this. People arrived on a remote island in the Pacific. They cut down trees to move massive statues and had confrontations with each other. They ran out of resources, and their society collapsed. Researchers kept digging, testing soil, studying rocks, and analyzing climate records. The more evidence they gathered, the less the collapse story made sense. The island didn't just fall apart on its own. Something else kept pushing it, year after year, generation after generation. Now scientists think that something else was a mega drought that lasted centuries. When rainfall drops below normal for so long, the land changes, plants struggle, and farming becomes risky. Fresh water becomes the most important resource on the island. On Rapa Nui, fresh water has always been limited. The island covers only about 63 square miles, and it has no major rivers or long flowing streams. It has a few volcanic crater lakes, but they cannot support everyone during extreme dry periods, when rain disappears for decades at a time. Every drop matters. Most of the island's usable water lies underground. Volcanic rock forms the island's base, and rainwater seeps down through openings and collects below. In certain coastal areas, the groundwater slowly leaks back out near the ocean. When it mixes slightly with salt water, it can still remain drinkable if the salt level stays low enough. That narrow band along the shoreline becomes a lifeline. During a long drought, those spots turn into the difference between survival and disaster. And here's where it gets interesting. Many moai stand exactly near those coastal groundwater seeps. They cluster in places where fresh water would have been available, especially during dry seasons. That pattern forced scientists to ask a simple question. What if the statues marked water? What if they stood where people gathered because water flowed there? Some older theories said it was all about competition between clans. You know, bigger statues means more might, and more statues means more prestige. But then, researchers mapped statue locations and noticed they all had to do with access to water. And this connection looked too strong to ignore. The moai may have served as social markers. They signaled that a group controlled and protected a vital freshwater source. And in a place with almost no rivers, that control meant everything. As the drought stretched on, life likely shifted closer to the coast. Inland areas weren't that important anymore when crops struggled and surface water disappeared. Coastal zones with groundwater became centers of activity. People farmed carefully using rock gardens that trapped moisture in the soil. They used broken stones to reduce evaporation and protect crops from wind. That technique shows planning, not chaos. It shows that they adjusted to the new conditions. The statues themselves show that people had to work together and stay organized to make them happen. Some weigh up to 80 tons. Some stand more than 30 feet tall. Moving them across uneven terrain without metal tools seems impossible, but new research solved that mystery. They built a replica of a moai that weighed about 4.35 tons. For the experiment, 18 people grabbed ropes attached to the statue and started rocking it side to side. Step by step, they guided it forward for about 300 feet, and they did it in just 40 minutes. That's surprisingly quick and way more efficient than trying to move around a massive stone slab flat across logs or wooden rollers. The island itself actually made the job easier. Ancient roads on Rapa Nui were about 14 feet wide, and they had a slight inward curve along the edges. That subtle curve works like a natural guide rail. It helps keep a tall, heavy statue balanced as it walks forward in that rocking motion. Each move didn't just transport a moai, it reshaped the path too. The workers likely cleared stones and leveled the ground as they went to prepare short sections at a time. They probably cleared a stretch, rocked the statue forward in a steady rhythm, stopped, adjusted the ropes, cleaned up the next patch, and repeated the process. If you look at aerial images of the island today, you can still see traces of these ancient roads. They crisscross the landscape, sometimes running parallel like backup routes. If people did not cut down every tree to move statues, then the collapse story would weaken even more. Forests can disappear over time, but it now looks like drought played a bigger role in the story. Trees struggle when rainfall drops year after year. Weather can thin forests without humans being reckless. Genetic studies add another layer. Researchers used to believe the local population collapsed before the Europeans arrived in the 1700s. But then they analyzed the genomes of 15 historical Rapa Nui individuals and found no sign of a massive population crash in the 1600s. In genetics, a real collapse leaves a clear fingerprint called a bottleneck, which means the population shrinks so much that genetic diversity drops sharply. The team didn't see that at all. Instead, they saw that the population stayed relatively small and stable and likely never exceeded 3,000 people. That number lines up much more closely with what early European visitors recorded, and it's nowhere near older estimates that claimed 15,000 people once lived there. But there was clearly a sharp decline in the 1860s after European contact, not before. And here's another twist. The DNA also shows Native American ancestry in both past and present Rapa Nui individuals. The mixing likely happened centuries before Europeans reached the island in 1722. That means Polynesians and indigenous people from South America somehow met across thousands of miles of open ocean. Maybe Rapa Nui sailors traveled east, or Native Americans sailed west. Either way, the contact happened long before colonial ships appeared on the horizon. Archaeology adds another layer to this. Researchers found obsidian blades at the earliest known settlement on Rapa Nui. When they examined the tools under microscopes, they found tiny starch grains stuck to the edges. That's ancient food residue. Out of 46 grains, they could clearly identify 21, and those grains came from 8 different plants. Some of them made sense. Taro and yam are classic Polynesian crops. Breadfruit and Tahitian apple are also Polynesian, likely carried across the ocean in canoes by the first settlers. Ginger showed up too, probably used as medicine or spice, but the blades also carried traces of sweet potato, cassava, and achira, crops native to South America, and they found them in the earliest levels of the site. That means the first settlers didn't just survive on what they brought from Polynesia. They were already connected to South America about 1,000 years ago. Sweet potato especially stands out because it had to cross the Pacific somehow long before Europeans arrived in 1722. So when people talk about Rapa Nui as isolated and cut off, that picture doesn't really hold up. They were skilled ocean navigators. Researchers now want to go further. They plan to use isotopic analysis to figure out ancient rainfall patterns. Isotopes are tiny variations in chemical elements. By studying them in soil and rock, scientists can estimate how wet or dry the climate was centuries ago. They also want to map underground aquifers, those natural reservoirs of groundwater stored in rock layers. That mapping could confirm exactly how closely statue placement matches freshwater sources. And this way, with every new study, that dramatic "they ruined themselves" story falls apart a little more. Life on the island wasn't easy with long droughts that put everyone under pressure, but the evidence doesn't show a society spiraling into chaos. It shows people adapting. They focused on protecting the resources that truly mattered, and somehow they kept things going for generations in a place that never offered much room for error. And that completely changes how we see Rapa Nui.
Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look, and what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic. Explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect. A dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all. If there's a question that still baffles archaeologists to this day, it's this one. How did the ancient Egyptians build those magnificent pyramids? As far as we know today, their resources were quite limited, especially in terms of tools and building materials. We still don't have a fully satisfying answer, but hey, we've got some pretty amazing theories worth considering. The leading contender among these theories involves the clever Egyptians employing a sneaky strategy. Now picture this. They constructed a slanted and curving mound made of bricks, earth, and sand encircling the pyramid to be. As the pyramid grew taller and taller, they simply increased the height and length of this wacky structure. It's like they were playing an ancient game of Jenga. Now, how did they get those massive stone blocks up there? Well, according to the legendary ancient Greek historian Herodotus, they used sleds, rollers, and levers. It sounds like they turned construction into a supersized game of tug-of-war. And guess what? Herodotus also claimed that the Great Pyramid, the one from Giza, the granddaddy of them all, took a whopping 20 years to build. There's more. Herodotus also dropped a mind-boggling number on us. 100,000 men were supposedly involved in this pyramid extravaganza. Did they hire the entire Egyptian population? Well, it might not be as far-fetched as it sounds. These men were probably mostly farmers, so they probably focused on the pyramids when there wasn't much work to be done in the fields. Like during the flood season of the Nile River. Obviously, specialists in the archaeological community had something to add to this theory. By the late 20th century, they discovered some evidence that suggests the workforce might have been smaller and more permanent than previously thought. Instead of a massive army of 100,000 pyramid builders, they proposed that a modest crew of around 20,000 workers, accompanied by support personnel like bakers, physicians, and even spiritual leaders, could have gotten the job done. There was also this theory that claimed that the pyramids were actually built from the top downward. It suggested that these colossal structures were nothing more than isolated hills used as quarries. The stones were supposedly drawn from these hills, and over time, competing engineers took charge and transformed them into the iconic pyramids we know today. Now, before you dismiss this theory as a wild fantasy, some folks thought it wasn't completely crazy. After all, there are instances where isolated hills exist, so maybe this theory had a tiny glimmer of truth. Whether it involved ramp building or ingenious work schedules, one thing is clear. Those pyramids have definitely left their mark on history and on our imaginations. Now, speaking of ancient Egyptian mysteries, there's this gigantic unfinished obelisk sitting in ancient Egypt, and scientists are trying to figure out how it was shaped. Now, some people suggest that our industrious ancestors used handheld pounders to get the job done. One expert has a different take on the matter, though. He argues that if we take a closer look at the pattern left behind by the shaping tool, we'll notice something peculiar. The walls of the trenches surrounding the obelisk display a neat and even pattern, which is pretty unlikely if they were pounded away by mere mortal hands. According to this expert, those horizontal striations are usually the result of a tool that takes breaks while removing material, leaving its mark on the surface. But wait, there's more. Imagine the tool being rocked back and forth against the trench walls, clearing away the waste to keep the trench from narrowing. Well, in that case, the tool might have left some funky horizontal striations where it was pressed against the sidewall. This sounds like some fancy technology at play, don't you think? And guess what? The dynastic Egyptians probably didn't have access to that kind of know-how. Another famous Egyptologist from way back also uncovered a bunch of core drills during his adventures. Although the actual drill bits are missing, his collection houses these particular core remnants made of limestone, alabaster, and even granite. These constructions aren't the only amazing thing the ancient Egyptians left behind, though. As it turns out, the Egyptians were the genius minds behind the creation of the handheld mirror. Yeah, that little mirror you use every day to check yourself out. But here's the twist. These mirrors are like pieces of art. They were decorated with inscriptions and figures. But that's not all. The Egyptians had a serious concern with their appearance. They knew the importance of personal hygiene and looking fabulous. So, in their quest for pearly whites, they invented toothbrushes and toothpaste. Dental problems were pretty common back then, and their smiles weren't exactly all white. Dentistry wasn't their strongest suit, you see. Maybe their minds were distracted by all that pyramid building. So that doesn't mean those ancient toothpaste recipes weren't amazing. One delightful concoction included rock salt, mint, dried iris petals, and pepper. Some brave dentists in the 21st century tried it out, and it worked pretty well. Ground-up ash was also used in another recipe to create a tooth cleansing paste. Mint was missing, so that didn't do much for their breath. That's when the genius Egyptians came up with the world's first breath mints. They made tablets from heated spices like cinnamon, and they mixed it with honey. Now, let's shift gears to home decor, Egyptian style. They surely took ornamentation to the next level. While the concept of decorating furniture started in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians cranked it up a notch. They went all out with different colors of ink and even developed various weights of paper. Oh, and let's not forget about those cute little area rugs we all have in our homes today. Guess who came up with the idea? Yep, the Egyptians. They used the versatile papyrus plant to make those cozy rugs. And speaking of trends, the Egyptians loved their knickknacks. They had an assortment of small figurines in the shapes of cats, dogs, and people. These statues were made from various materials, like simple sun-dried mud to the ultimate bling of gold. It all depended on how loaded you were. The Egyptians were also all about farming, and they knew that clean water was crucial for their crops and animals. That's why they came up with some nifty inventions and techniques to make sure their land was fertile and their plants were happy. First off, they had the genius idea of using ox-drawn plows. They had two types of plows, heavy and light. The heavy plow would strut its stuff, cutting deep furrows in the soil, while the lighter plow followed behind, fluffing up the earth. But they didn't stop there. After plowing, the Egyptians would break up clumps of soil and sow the rows with seeds. To give those seeds a good old squish into the furrows, they'd march their livestock across the field, effectively closing up the furrows. But hey, all that hard work would be pointless if their seeds were as dry as the Sahara. That's where irrigation comes into play. The Egyptians were so good at it that other cultures, like the Greeks and Romans, couldn't help but copy their techniques. Now let's switch gears and talk about the marvelous architecture of ancient Egypt. These folks weren't just skilled farmers, they were also architectural maestros. They built these fancy canals to carry water to farms and villages, and boy, did they know how to make those canals look pretty. Just imagine strolling along a canal lined with ornate structures. The pharaoh Ramesses the Great was quite the overachiever when it came to construction. One of his mind-blowing creations was the construction located at Abu Simbel. This building was designed so that twice a year, the sun would shine directly into it and illuminate the statues of Ramesses. And let's not forget about the corbelled arch. Without this architectural gem, we'd be missing out on some mind-boggling structures like the Great Pyramid. The Egyptians knew how to make things stand tall and proud, thanks to their engineering and construction wizardry. They built grand halls and inner sanctums that make your jaw drop. And some of these temples doubled as astronomical observatories.
This rock should not exist on Earth. And yet, it showed up in a Chinese desert back in 2024. Now we know it's a rare mineral from the moon with the potential to reshape LED technology. It could make our lights last way longer and cut down our electricity bills, all because it has this really eerie glow. The cerium magnesium changasite is unlike anything else we know of. It's transparent and shines like glass. It's very fragile and it tends to break like a shell. But then it gets stranger. If you put this mineral under ultraviolet light, it gives off an eerie glow. Yep, it's fluorescent. And this matters because fluorescent materials play a big role in how LEDs work. You know, the energy-efficient lights we use every day. Most LEDs make blue light first and then use a fluorescent material to convert it into white light. So if this mineral is really good at glowing under UV, it could help make that process more efficient somehow. But scientists are still trying to figure that out. This discovery isn't just about saving on electricity bills. This is the 11th lunar mineral ever found, and every new one helps scientists understand the moon a little better. This mineral probably formed under volcanic conditions that we still haven't fully explored on the moon. That's important because it's like a snapshot of geological processes that never happened on Earth, at least not that we know of so far. And if we ever find the same mineral here, it could help researchers compare Earth's past with the moon's, and it might reveal new clues about how our planet was formed. It might also help plan future space missions and build lunar bases. The more scientists understand lunar minerals, the better they can figure out how to use natural resources in space, instead of bringing everything from Earth. This mineral gives us a rare clue for understanding how extreme pressure and temperatures can create unusual materials. By studying the conditions that formed it on the moon, researchers may eventually learn how to recreate similar materials here on Earth. But for now, they can't promise anything. Using it in large scale is still a distant possibility, especially because getting material from space is extremely difficult and expensive. Still, discoveries like this show how much the moon may still have to teach us. Not just about space, but about the next generation of technology on Earth.
Kaboom! One huge asteroid could be enough to wipe out all dinosaurs that ever roamed the Earth, leaving behind nothing but a huge crater. Yeah, we're in the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, and underneath there's Chicxulub, a massive crater. Now, if there's this immense hole, there must be a meteor too, right? Well, weirdly, no one has ever seen the actual remnants of the space rock itself. It's a bit weird, especially considering how important it is. After all, many think the same meteor that created the crater is the one that wiped out dinosaurs. Now, it might have vaporized on impact, creating a massive explosion. Most of the meteor could have turned into gas or tiny fragments scattered across the atmosphere. Or it might still be here, on Earth, just hiding. And scientists have finally discovered where to look for it. But it's not easy to reach. Around 66 million years ago, a giant asteroid went down and marked the end of the Cretaceous period. It slammed into what's now called Mexico, just north of Central America. The explosion from the impact triggered a global heat wave, which was followed by years of winter. It threw Earth into total chaos. The consequences of this catastrophe led to the extinction of more than 60% of life on Earth, including all the non-avian dinosaurs like T-Rex and Triceratops. It also took down flying reptiles, pterosaurs, and sea creatures like mosasaurs. Long story short, it was the end of the dinosaurs era. But don't be too sad about it, because it paved the way for the rise of mammals and you and me. Anyway, scientists have recently figured out where the infamous asteroid came from and where it ended up. The thing wasn't just wandering around Earth's neighborhood. This massive rock might have formed beyond Jupiter and headed straight for our planet. But we'll talk about that a bit later. First, let's look more closely at the collision that created the Chicxulub crater. When the asteroid slammed into Earth, rocks from deep within the planet's crust were thrown up to 15.5 miles into the sky. It also created mountains taller than the Himalayas around the crater's edge. The asteroid itself, called the Chicxulub impactor, was about 6 to 9 miles in diameter. It hit Earth at a speed of around 12 miles per second, coming in at a 60-degree angle. I know we're not in a geometry class, but the angle is important here, since it was exactly right to send the maximum amount of vaporized rock into the atmosphere. As a result, massive plumes of sulfur gases and fine dust shot up, blocking out the sun and causing what's known as an impact winter, which lasted about 15 years. At the time, dinosaurs reigned on Earth. They'd been around for nearly 200 million years before the catastrophe led to their disappearance. The meteor theory seems all plausible, and all the facts add up, but even now, not everyone agrees with that. Some believe that dinosaurs were already on the brink of extinction before the asteroid impact, and the collision might have just sped up the process. Anyway, most dinosaurs were wiped out, but if scientists are right, then those who somehow managed to survive were the ancestors of modern-day birds. So we have an idea of what might have happened, but it took years of studies. The crater was first identified by scientists working for Pemex, a Mexican oil company, in the 1970s. And sometime later, scientists finally realized the mass extinction event that ended the Cretaceous period was because of the Chicxulub. One piece of evidence that pointed to the asteroid were the local fish back then. You see, when the asteroid struck, the immense force of the impact reshaped the planet's surface. For example, it turned rocks into glass-like spherules. Now, spherules are like small spherical particles that can form from the rapid cooling of molten silica droplets. And some of these spherules ended up in the gills of fish that were wiped out by the impact. So, when during another research, scientists studied these fossils, it became obvious to them that the asteroid strike had happened during springtime in the northern hemisphere. They figured this out by studying the lines of growth in the fish's bones. Yep, those can be read just like tree rings. Of course, throughout many years, researchers continued exploring the impact site, hoping to find new data about the catastrophe. Their best bet was to turn to the chemical record left behind by the asteroid, the debris of which is hiding under all those layers of rock and sediment under the Yucatan Peninsula. So they studied the chemical signatures in rocks from the end of the Cretaceous period and found that the asteroid came from beyond Jupiter. And it wasn't just any asteroid. No, it was a carbonaceous chondrite, one of the oldest types of asteroids in the solar system. It most likely formed billions of years ago. These types of asteroids only come from the region beyond Jupiter. So the asteroid that caused the extinction event must have originated there. One of the main clues was ruthenium. It's a rare element in Earth's rocks, but much more common in asteroids. Scientists detected tiny amounts of ruthenium in the rocks, which helped them confirm that the asteroid came from outer space, not from a comet or volcanic eruptions. In 2016, scientists also published the first results from a drilling expedition into the Chicxulub crater. The team managed to drill more than 4,000 feet beneath the seafloor, getting their hands on core samples containing pieces of the original granite bedrock that was struck by the asteroid. These rocks are deeply shocked and placed out of order on top of sedimentary layers. It supports the theory that the peak ring of the Chicxulub crater formed through a dynamic collapse process. Now, about that peak ring, scientists specifically targeted it in their exploration. The so-called ring is a circular ridge inside the crater rim. Similar peak rings can be found in the largest impact craters in our solar system, on the Moon, Mars, and Mercury. But on Earth, Chicxulub is the only well-preserved crater with a peak ring. This discovery also aligns with recent findings from NASA's lunar mission. It showed that the peak rings within the Orientale impact basin on the Moon had formed in an equivalent way to those at Chicxulub. The team is so eager to study the peak ring because they want to test their models of crater formation. Plus, they hope to find out whether this area could have been one of the first habitats for microbial life after the asteroid impact that wiped out dinosaurs. The peak ring formed just minutes after the impact. The deep granite bedrock, initially flowing like a liquid, rebounded into a central tower as tall as 6 miles before collapsing into the ridge we see today. This was followed by a layer of breccia. That's a jumble of rocks and impact melt. And after that, ocean tsunamis brought massive amounts of sandy sediment into the crater. Another find from 2016 was a 10-foot-long core, which revealed bits of granite and minerals from hot, fluid-filled cracks. That was a sign that they had finally entered the peak ring. Geophysicists from the University of Texas explained that they had expected the peak ring to be a large hydrothermal system, and they were drilling to confirm this. The team eventually reached deeper layers, drilling down to 4,380 feet. The team was able to collect most of the core samples they hoped to get, and the samples they got were in great shape. They also gathered lots of useful data from the early Paleocene period and completed a successful scan of the drill hole. Now, scientists from around the world will need some time to fully study and understand what these findings mean. But they're sure that this mission will help answer some big questions, like what exactly happened when the asteroid hit, how it wiped out the dinosaurs, and how impacts like that affect life deep underground.
There are countless doors all over the world that haven't been opened for decades, and even centuries. The question is why? It seems that nowadays you can open any door you want. The truth is that some doors were sealed for a grave reason. And so far, nobody has found out what treasures and mysteries they hide. Here are 4 doors that keep their secrets all too well. The Taj Mahal. First up, we've got the Taj Mahal in India, one of the most romantic places in the world. Shah Jahan commissioned it in 1631 and dedicated it to his 3rd wife, who he loved like crazy. They were married for 19 years and had a whopping 14 kids together. But unfortunately, she passed away while giving birth to their last baby. Shah Jahan was heartbroken and decided to build an epic tomb to remember her by. The construction took a whopping 20 years to finish. The building has quite an interesting layout. The design is super unusual with these 4 massive, 130-foot tall minarets that stand on the corners of a huge platform. They're not just there for looks. Back in the 17th century, architects were having some serious issues with buildings collapsing under their own weight. So, the chief architect of the Taj Mahal made sure to place those minarets as far away from the tomb as possible. And he even tilted them in a way so that if they did fall, they wouldn't wreck the rest of the Taj Mahal. Talk about planning ahead. The Taj Mahal is hiding some crazy secrets. There are sealed rooms all over the place that nobody is allowed to enter. And if you check out photos of the building from the riverside, you can spot 2 basements. But guess what? They're sealed up too. Nobody knows what's inside or why they've been locked up since the time of Shah Jahan. Apparently, there's a good reason why those rooms are off limits. Some researchers think that they were built using marble, which turns into a different substance called calcium carbonate if it's exposed to carbon dioxide. And when that happens, little bits of marble start chipping off like crazy. To make matters worse, there's no air flowing into these rooms. That means that if too much CO2 builds up in the basement, the 4 minarets could collapse. But wait, there's more. Some people think that the body of Shah Jahan's wife can be found in one of these sealed-up rooms in pristine condition. Why not? Who knows what the mysterious rooms might keep? The Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx of Giza is shrouded in mystery. It's not just the largest monolith statue in the world, but it's also a hybrid creature with a woman's head and a lion's body that originates from Egyptian and Greek mythology. It's also very ancient. It's estimated to be around 4,500 years old. The construction of this marvel took about 3 years and required 100 workers who were not slaves and were treated with delicacies like sheep and goat meat. It is also thought that it used to be much more massive than it is now. Archaeologists found huge stone blocks and abandoned toolkits near the site. However, the real secrets of the Sphinx lie underground, near its paws. A group of scientists used a seismograph to detect 2 hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx's paws. Some people think that these rooms might be the legendary Hall of Records, which holds ancient scrolls revealing the secrets of the universe. I mean, that's way cooler than any library I've ever been to. Rumor has it that the Egyptians even had info on Atlantis stashed down there, which is like a super old version of a conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, we can't go on an adventure to check it out just yet. The chambers presumably have 2 entrances, but both remain sealed. The researchers haven't yet received the green light to check out their theory. Let's hope they won't keep us in suspense forever. Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple. This temple is located in the beautiful state of Kerala in India. This temple is famous for more than just its breathtaking beauty. Underneath the temple there are 6 vaults, creatively named A, B, C, D, E, and F. The enormous iron doors to these chambers add to the mystery of what's behind them. A few years back, the authorities decided to open these vaults to the world, but it wasn't an easy task. You can't just open the doors and enter the vaults. It required a lot of work. It took them a while, but finally, in 2011, they opened 5 of the 6 chambers. And guess what they found? Tons of treasure. Bags of gold, precious gemstones, and priceless diamond jewelry. The estimated worth of everything found in the vaults is a whopping $1 trillion. It's like the temple was the real-life inspiration for Aladdin's Cave of Wonders. But wait, I said 5 of the 6. What happened to the last one? Vault B has remained closed, but not for lack of trying. They simply didn't manage to open it. There is even a belief that it's fatally cursed. Legend says that only a saint or sage can break the curse by chanting a specific mantra. But no one has been able to do this yet, presumably because we don't have saints or sages at our disposal. There is also rumor that in the 30s some temple invaders tried to enter Vault B to do some good old looting. But they never reached their target. Apparently terrible snakes materialized out of nowhere and chased the gang away. But of course, this is just an urban legend, and there is not proof of that. However, it is said that the Auditor General dealing with the temple claimed that Vault B had been opened at least 7 times since 1990, and nothing bad happened to anyone who entered. Who knows? Maybe we should send Indiana Jones to check it out. The First Emperor's Tomb. Deep under a hill, completely undisturbed and surrounded by dangerous traps, lies an ancient 2,000-year-old tomb. It belongs to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He was born in the Qin state and became king when he was just a boy. But when he grew up and gained full power, he united the warring states ancient China was divided into by conquering them. After that, he created the Qin dynasty. When he died in 210 BCE, they buried him deep underground in a massive tomb. And when I say massive, I mean massive! Back in 1974, some farmers in Xi'an, China, stumbled upon something strange while digging a well, a huge terracotta soldier. This discovery led to an extensive archaeological dig that has continued for over 40 years, revealing a collection of thousands of clay soldiers. The unique thing about these soldiers is that each one has its own unique features, from hairstyles to facial expressions. It's believed that there could be up to 8,000 of these soldiers, but only 2,000 have been found so far. Interestingly, the central tomb, which is believed to be the resting place of the emperor, is still untouched. In ancient records, there are references to a vast underground city that the emperor built, complete with scenic towers, palaces, and whatnot. Sima Qian, a Han Dynasty historian, wrote that the tomb was adorned with treasures and had space for hundreds of officials, but the lack of technology to properly examine the site is what's holding things up. Qin Shi Huang was surrounded by liquid mercury in his tomb, with 2 of the streams representing the major rivers of China, Yellow River and Yangtze. The ancient Chinese believed that mercury could provide immortality, but it could have also caused the emperor's death since he regularly took mercury pills to prolong his life. The dangerous levels of mercury contamination in the soil near the tomb are the main reason why scientists are reluctant to explore it. It could be very dangerous both for people and for the environment. Now, if I had to choose which door to open, I'd probably go for the one that doesn't lead to a tomb surrounded by poisonous mercury. Call me crazy, but I'd like to avoid any potential health hazards.
Deep in Petra's Red Cliffs, archaeologists found a hidden tomb. Inside, there were 12 skeletons. They remained untouched for over 2,000 years, and that's a really weird thing. Most tombs in Petra have been looted, so what makes this find stand out? Let's figure it out. This is the ancient city of Petra. Its huge sandstone cliffs are hard to forget. No wonder it's one of the new 7 wonders of the world. The buildings here are carved straight into the rock, and it already makes the place look unreal. But Petra has also been a star in the archaeology world for a long time. Once, Petra appeared in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Some scenes were filmed right in front of the famous building called Al-Khazneh, or the Treasury. But recently, something even more exciting happened there in real life. A TV team from the show Expedition Unknown came to Petra to film a new investigation. And while they were there, archaeologists made a huge discovery. They found 12 human skeletons and several ancient objects. All of them were buried under the ground in front of the treasury, hidden there for about 2,000 years. Archaeologists didn't start digging right away. First, they used a special tool called ground-penetrating radar, something like an X-ray for the ground. Instead of guessing where to dig, the machine scans underground and shows shapes that might be tombs or empty spaces. Anyway, when the team looked at the radar data, something interesting showed up. The patterns looked very similar to places in Petra where tombs had already been found before. That was a big clue that something might be hiding underground. After seeing the results, the authorities of Jordan gave permission for the excavation. That's when the team finally started digging under the famous site. And that's how they uncovered the skeletons and ancient artifacts. Interestingly, many tombs in Petra have been found completely empty, because over the centuries, anything valuable was taken by looters, or simply disappeared with time. But this tomb was very different. Inside, the team discovered 12 human skeletons and a few ancient objects. Some of the bones even had mold on them. That happened because Petra is carved into sandstone cliffs. Sandstone is quite porous, which means it can soak up water like a giant sponge. The area sometimes floods, and moisture likely slowly made its way into the tomb. Along with the skeletons, the archaeologists found stuff made of bronze, iron, and ceramic. One object stood out, a ceramic chalice resting in the arms of one of the buried people. It was almost as if the person had been holding it when they were laid to rest. Mysteriously, the cup looked a lot like the Holy Grail from the Indiana Jones movie. The famous building above the tomb, the Al-Khazneh, stands near the main entrance to the city. It's believed to be at least 2,000 years old. This huge structure is carved directly into the sandstone cliffs. Today, it's one of the most recognizable landmarks in the world. But even though the treasury is so famous, archaeologists still don't fully understand its history. One reason is that many of the nearby tombs didn't contain many artifacts, and without things to study, it becomes much harder to figure out exactly when the building was made or how it was used. That's why the team was so excited. The discovery could help them learn more about the ancient people who lived in Petra and built the city. The location of the tomb might already be an important clue. You see, being buried right in front of the treasury was probably a huge honor. The human remains themselves could also tell an interesting story. The skeletons were still lying in their original positions without being moved around or disturbed by looters. That's why scientists can study them much more carefully to learn things like how old these people were, how they lived, or if they were healthy. We could also learn more about the place those people called home, the ancient city of Petra. It was built more than 2,000 years ago by the Nabateans. Starting around the 4th century BCE, this desert city became the center of their kingdom and an important stop for trade across the Middle East. The location helped a lot. Petra sits in a valley surrounded by mountains, and the main entrance is a long, narrow canyon called the Al-Sik. Because the path is so tight, the city was easy to defend and hard for enemies to attack. Thanks to these factors, the city grew quickly. At its peak, around 30,000 people may have lived there, but the city sits in a dry desert canyon. Natural water is kinda limited there. So how did so many people live in Petra? The answer is clever engineering. The Nabateans built a water system that was incredibly advanced for its time. They didn't rely on one water source. It was a whole network carved directly into the rock. They cut channels, pipes, and storage tanks into the cliffs. This helped them guide water from nearby springs into the city. It was like an ancient plumbing system built entirely out of stone. Even better, the water didn't just flow straight into the city. First, it passed through special settling basins where dirt and sand could sink to the bottom. After that, the water was stored in large reservoirs surrounded by thick stone walls, which helped keep the water cooler in the desert heat. Flash floods were also a big danger in the canyon. When heavy rain fell in the surrounding mountains, water often rushed down the narrow valleys. To deal with that, the Nabateans built dams and channels that redirected the floodwater into storage reservoirs. Another intriguing thing about Petra is the location of its main buildings. In 2013, researchers found that several important monuments lined up with the sun during key moments of the year, like the solstices and equinoxes. Scientists now believe that the buildings may have worked like giant calendars, helping people track the seasons in a desert landscape. Natural signs of time can be hard to notice there. Another Petra mystery is 3 massive stone blocks, the Jinn blocks. They go back to around the 2nd century BCE and are some of the first big tombs built in Petra. 2 of them have burial chambers inside, and the 3rd one even has a grave on top, like a little rooftop coffin. No one really knows exactly why they were built. Most experts say they were tombs, but some think they may have been carved to honor deities or used in rituals. But however great Petra was, things started to change in 106 CE. That's when the powerful Roman Empire took control of the city and made it part of their territory. Trade didn't completely stop, but the city slowly lost some of its importance. Later, a large earthquake in 551 CE caused serious damage to the area. It could have been the final blow for a city that was already in decline. Over time, Petra was eventually abandoned and became known as the Lost City. But there's another nickname people used much more often, the Rose City. The name comes from the color of the cliffs around Petra. The sandstone rocks have a reddish-pink color, especially when the sun is low in the sky. What tourists see today is just a tiny slice of Petra. Some estimates say archaeologists have only dug up about 15% of the city. Visitors go through the narrow Sik, gape at the 130-foot-high treasury, walk along tomb-lined streets, and climb over 800 steps to reach the monastery, Al-Dir. But that's like seeing the tip of an iceberg. The rest is still buried. Petra keeps surprising us. In 2016, researchers used satellite images to spot a huge, previously unknown monument. The platform is massive, about 184 by 161 feet, and has columns along one side. Pottery fragments suggest it's over 2,150 years old. So basically, even after centuries of exploration, Petra is still full of secrets. They're just waiting to be uncovered. Death Valley, the hottest, driest, and lowest place in North America. It's also a national park larger than some entire countries, like Cyprus and the Gambia. But what really makes this desert stand out is that it's home to one of the rarest fish on the planet. Not only does it thrive in the desert, it can also survive on very little oxygen and chill in water hot enough to cook your salmon. First things first, the fact that these guys live in the desert doesn't mean water is out of the equation. Even these extremely unusual fish still need this precious liquid like any other fish. Don't fall for the common misconception that desert equals no water. For example, Antarctica is technically a polar desert, but imagine how much water you'd have if you melted all that ice. So deserts aren't defined by the total absence of water, they're defined by extremely low precipitation. Because of that, you usually won't see much water on the surface. In Death Valley, if you want to find it, you'll have to look deeper, sometimes down into sketchy cracks in the ground. Here's one of them, Devil's Hole. Now that you're standing near the edge of this hole, don't jump in, just look. See that dark patch? It's all water. No one fully knows what's inside. The cavern formed around 500,000 years ago, and the whole system is extremely sensitive. It even experiences seiches, sloshing waves in the water that can be triggered by distant earthquakes. So an earthquake in Japan can actually affect the geological activity as far away as Nevada. Needless to say, the bottom has never been completely mapped. The passages and branches down there are narrow, and people who attempt to explore them have a reputation for never coming back. It's happened several times already. And down there where people can't get, let alone thrive, lives a small school of extremely tough fish, the Devil's Hole pupfish. They were first discovered around 100 years ago. These fish don't dive deep, they stay close to the surface. Even though Devil's Hole is more than 430 feet deep, pupfish are only found in the upper 80 feet. Nothing too impressive so far, but to really appreciate how tough these fish are, you need to understand how oxygen and fish physiologically work. Let's start with a bit of theory. There's a measurement called parts per million, which is used to measure concentrations of substances in water, including oxygen. For a typical fish to thrive, dissolved oxygen needs to be around 5 to 6 parts per million. But in Devil's Hole, dissolved oxygen levels are only about 2.5 to 3 parts per million. Low dissolved oxygen levels, below 3 ppm, become stressful for most aquatic organisms, and extremely low levels usually won't support fish survival at all. Basically, Devil's Hole pupfish only get about 50% of the oxygen a typical fish needs. To translate that into something humans can relate to, a normal fish in these conditions would feel like an average unprepared person standing on top of Mount Everest, severely oxygen deprived. Most fish would simply kick the bucket in these conditions. And there's one more detail that makes things even worse. Warmer water holds less oxygen and also increases a fish's metabolic rate, which makes 2.5 ppm far more lethal in summer than in winter. Remember, we're talking about a crack in Death Valley. Winters here aren't brutally cold like in Canada, but summers are absolutely scorching. Now you can start to see the double problem. Not only is there very little oxygen, the water is also extremely hot for average fish. In Devil's Hole, water temperatures can reach 108 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you think, well, it ain't McDonald's coffee, I get what you think. It's true that what we see as really hot can reach, say, 170 degrees Fahrenheit. But most aquarium fish thrive at temperatures between 75 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And many tropical fish begin to struggle when water gets above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And when I said that the water in Devil's Hole can cook your salmon, I wasn't lying either, just exaggerated a little bit. This temperature won't get you a steak, but there are cooking techniques that require these conditions, say, if you like your fish rare. If you want to imagine what it's like being a pupfish, I have a question for you. Have you ever been in a hot tub? If the answer is yes, then you probably know what it's like, yet it must be a bit hotter than usual. Hot tubs are normally set between 100 and 102 degrees Fahrenheit, and the maximum safe temperature for adults is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature in Devil's Hole can be even a couple degrees higher than that. As for their appearance, the fish themselves are blue and tiny, about 0.9 to 1.2 inches long. The size actually makes perfect sense. Devil's Hole is a tight space, so a large fish wouldn't have much room to move around. So, low oxygen, hot water. But how did fish end up here in the first place? Normally, animals spread from one place to another through connected habitats, rivers, lakes, or coastlines. but Devil's Hole doesn't have any of that. It's completely isolated. Researchers think the answer goes back thousands of years. Around 11,000 years ago, the climate in this region began to change dramatically. At that time, the area looked very different. Instead of desert, there was a large system of shallow lakes and rivers spread across the region. Over time, those waters slowly dried up. As the ancient lake system disappeared, only a few water sources remained. Salty, isolated springs scattered across the desert. Some populations of pupfish survived in those springs, cut off from one another. Isolation can have its advantages. It's a small, tight-knit world, no natural predators, and since these fish feed on algae, they don't even need to hunt. Their food is basically everywhere, like a natural all-you-can-eat buffet. But there's a catch. In 2024, researchers counted 191 fish. In 2025, only 38 remained. 2 earthquakes are thought to have caused the sudden population drop. The tremors disrupted the algae, the fish's main food source, and likely damaged their eggs as well. And it's difficult to say what the future holds, especially since many attempts at ex situ conservation, raising them outside their native crack in the rock, have failed so far. It's not only about the earthquakes. In the 1970s, nearby ranchers, the Capperts, pumped groundwater for irrigation. The pumping lowered the water level in the cavern, threatening a shallow, sunlit shelf where the fish spawn. It got so serious that the Supreme Court of the United States restricted that pumping. The Devil's Hole pupfish isn't the only rare and unusual fish out there. Meet the desert goby. And no, these fish do not live in the Gobi Desert, but in Australia. And honestly, this one might be even tougher than the pupfish. This species is scientifically called Chlamydogobius arameus. In South Australia, there's Lake Eyre. It works like a useful reference point, and hey, it's pretty. Desert gobies don't live in the lake itself, since it's very hard to survive there, even for the toughest fish. Instead, they inhabit isolated freshwater springs, flowing artesian bores, wells, and temporary water holes, usually around rocks and other submerged cover. These fish can withstand extremely high temperatures and dramatic fluctuations, roughly from 41 degrees Fahrenheit to about 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit. pH fluctuations don't bother them much either. The pH scale measures acidity and alkalinity. They can tolerate water with a pH ranging from 6.5 to 11. That means desert gobies can survive conditions comparable to slightly acidic water, around pH 6.5 to 7, human blood about pH 7.4, baking soda or borax solutions around pH 9 to 10, and even weak ammonia solutions around pH 11. They can also thrive in very high salinity. Some inland basins where they live range from about 1 to 37.5 parts per thousand of salt, while the ocean averages around 35 parts per thousand, and they require far less dissolved oxygen than even the pupfish. Levels as low as 0.8 parts per million can still be survivable. Although they aren't amphibious, they can survive hypoxic conditions using a form of aerial respiration. The fish holds a bubble of air, called a buccal bubble, against the roof of its mouth and extracts oxygen from it. Okay, I'm impressed. And what do you think? Which one is the toughest? Let me know in the comments.